The frost
See, the
came
needle
early
points
that
north. That's your
October,
direction.
creeping across
But what if I
Riverside
get
like
lost
an
then?
unwelcome
You
guest that
won't.
refused to
You have the
leave.
compass, and
It
you have
clung
me.
to
Okay,
windows, settled into
thanks.
the cracks of pavement, and made the mornings unbearable for anyone sleeping outside. Behind Franklin Middle School, pressed against the cold metal of a dumpster, with newspapers forming a thin barrier against the concrete, 13-year-old Emmett Webb learned to wake before dawn. Not by choice, but because staying still in that kind of cold meant risking something worse than discomfort. 7 months. That's how long he'd been invisible. The world moved around him in predictable patterns. Teachers arriving with coffee cups and tired eyes. Students dragging backpacks complaining about homework they'd actually had desks to complete. Janitors propping doors open, letting warm air escape into the October chill. No one looked at the dumpster. No one saw the thin boy with hollow cheeks and clothes 2 sizes too big, pulled from donation bins behind the Goodwill on Maple Street. Emmett had learned the rules of invisibility quickly. Move slowly, make no noise. Take only what wouldn't be missed. Avoid eye contact. Never ever ask for help, because help came with questions, and questions led to social services. And social services meant foster homes, and Emmett would rather freeze than go back to a place like the Hendersons' house, where help came with a closed door and a belt and silence that swallowed screams. So he stayed invisible. He survived on cafeteria leftovers that kitchen staff threw out at 2:15 each afternoon, carefully wrapped and placed on top of the dumpster instead of inside it. Mrs. Chen, the head cook, never acknowledged him, but she never threw the food away carelessly either. It was an unspoken agreement. He existed in her peripheral vision, and she pretended not to see. The public library became his sanctuary between 3 and 8 each evening. Warm, quiet, full of worlds that didn't include dumpsters or hunger or the particular ache of being 13 and utterly alone. He'd memorized his favorite shelf, second floor northwest corner, where the oversized books about architecture and design stood tall enough to hide behind. Mr. Peterson, the evening librarian, had caught him there once, tucked into the corner with a notebook writing. "You here for the free internet?" Mr. Peterson had asked, not unkindly. "Just reading," Emmett had answered, careful to keep his voice steady. Mr. Peterson had looked at him for a long moment, taking in the too thin frame, the worn jacket, the way Emmett's eyes darted toward the exit. Then he'd nodded. "Library closes at 8. You know that, right?" "Yes, sir." "Good." A pause. "There's usually leftover coffee in the break room around 7. Staff only, but if someone happened to pour a cup and leave it on the table by the magazines, well, that'd be their business." Emmett had found the coffee every evening since. Black lukewarm, but warm enough to matter. These small mercies kept him alive. The unspoken kindness of strangers who saw just enough to help, but not enough to intervene. It was a delicate balance, and Emmett had become an expert at maintaining it. But that morning, October 16th, the balance shattered. Emmett woke earlier than usual, jolted from sleep by a dream he couldn't quite remember. Something about his mother, her face pale against hospital sheets, her hand cold in his, her voice barely a whisper. "You're stronger than you know, baby. You're going to be okay." Except he wasn't okay. He was curled behind a dumpster, and his mother was 8 months dead, and the cancer that had destroyed her body had also destroyed every certainty Emmett had ever known. Medical bills had devoured their savings. The small apartment on Cherry Street went to the bank. His mother's sister, Aunt Caroline, had promised to take him in, but Caroline's husband had other ideas about raising someone else's kid, and the promises dissolved faster than morning fog. The foster system swallowed him whole. 3 weeks with the Hendersons taught Emmett that some cages were worse than streets. So here he was, 13 years old, invisible, surviving. He rubbed frost from his fingers, breath forming small clouds in the pre-dawn darkness. 4:47 according to the church bells that rang every 15 minutes from St. Michael's, 3 blocks away. Too early even for the janitors. Emmett knew he should try to sleep another hour, conserve energy, but the dream clung to him like cobwebs. His mother's voice. That last thing she'd said. You're going to be okay. He pulled out his notebook, the one possession he had managed to keep through everything. Battered composition book with a mottled black and white cover, pages filled with his handwriting. Not diary entries exactly. More like conversations with someone who wasn't there anymore. Letters to his mother, observations about the world, thoughts he needed to put somewhere other than his own head because keeping them inside felt like drowning. The pen was almost out of ink. He'd been rationing it, but even that was running out. Emmett wrote carefully in the dim light from the parking lot security lamp. October 16th. Cold. Dreamed about you again, Mom. The hospital. Your hands. I keep thinking about what you said about being okay. I'm trying. I don't know if this counts as okay, but I'm still here. That has to count for something, right? The library lady, Mrs. Patterson, looked at me weird yesterday. Thinks she knows I'm not just reading. Might have to find a new spot. The church on 5th lets people sit in the back during morning service. Could stay warm there for an hour. I miss you. I miss having someone who knows my name. He closed the notebook as the sky began to lighten from black to deep gray. 5:15. The world would wake soon. Emmett needed to move, find somewhere less exposed before the morning rush began. He was folding his newspaper blankets, careful to keep them intact for tonight, when he smelled it. Smoke. Not the usual smell of someone's fireplace or a cigarette. Something sharper. Chemical. Wrong. Emmett's head snapped up. The school building, massive and silent in the early light, looked normal at first glance. But there on the east wing, second floor, something moved behind a window. Not smoke yet, just a flicker, a wrongness in the glass. He stood slowly, newspapers falling away, watched, waited. Then he saw it clearly. Orange light dancing behind the window of what he knew was Mrs. Patterson's classroom. Not normal light, firelight. For 3 seconds, Emmett stood frozen. This wasn't his problem. The school had alarms. Someone would notice. Someone whose job it was to notice these things. He should leave. Get away before emergency vehicles arrived and someone started asking questions about why a kid was sleeping behind the school. But even as his mind cataloged these logical reasons to run, his feet moved him forward. Because the orange light was growing, spreading, and the window where the light danced was second floor east hallway. And school started at 7:45, which meant in 2.5 hours that building would be full of kids. Kids who trusted that adults had made the building safe. Kids who believed that schools were supposed to protect them. Emmett ran. His bare feet slapped against cold pavement, each step sending shocks of ice through his legs. He didn't have shoes anymore. They'd fallen apart 2 weeks ago, and the donated pair from the church bin had been stolen while he'd slept. Feet toughened fast when they had to, but frozen pavement was still frozen pavement. He reached the east entrance, the one the janitors used, grabbed the handle, locked. Of course it was locked. It was 5:20 in the morning. The smoke was visible now, curling from under the second floor window frame. Not much yet, but growing. Emmett pressed his face against the entrance door's glass panel, peering into the dark hallway. Nothing. No movement. No alarm. Why wasn't there an alarm? His heart hammered against his ribs. Think. Think. There was another entrance on the south side near the gym. Sometimes Coach Bradley forgot to lock it after late practices. Emmett had used it once to get out of a rainstorm huddling in the equipment room until morning. He sprinted around the building, along his burning feet, screaming. The south door's handle turned. Open. Emmett didn't let himself think about what he was doing. Thinking led to logic, and logic said this was insane. Instead, he pushed through the door into the dim hallway, and immediately the smell hit him. Stronger now, smoke and something else. Something that reminded him of the summer his mother had tried to strip paint from their apartment's windowsills. Chemical and sharp and dangerous. The hallway was dark except for the red glow of emergency exit signs. No alarm, no sprinklers. Why weren't the sprinklers working? Emmett moved toward the stairs, pulling his shirt over his mouth and nose. The smoke was thicker here, gathering near the ceiling like storm clouds. He climbed, taking stairs two at a time, and the temperature rose with each step. By the time he reached the second floor landing, the heat pressed against his skin like a living thing. The east hallway was worse. Smoke filled the upper half of the corridor, forcing Emmett to crouch low. Emergency lights flickered red through the haze, making everything look like a nightmare. He could hear it now. The fire. A low roar punctuated by sharp cracks as something inside the classroom gave way to the flames. Through the smoke, he saw the classroom door, Mrs. Patterson's room. The window beside it glowed orange, and smoke poured from the gap beneath the door. Then he heard something else, a sound that made his blood freeze. Crying, someone crying behind that door. "No," Emmett whispered. "No, no, no." School didn't start for 2 hours. The building should be empty, should be, but someone was in there. Emmett forced himself forward, staying low, eyes watering from the smoke. He reached the door and looked through the small window panel set into the wood. The glass was hot against his face, and through it he could see a nightmare. Half the classroom was engulfed in flames. Desks burned like torches. The ceiling tiles dripped fire, and in the back corner, pressed against the far wall, was a girl. She couldn't have been more than 11. Blonde hair in braids, school uniform which made no sense because school hadn't started. She was screaming, but Emmett couldn't hear it through the door and the roar of the flames. Just saw her mouth open, eyes wide with terror, hands pressed against the wall, as if she could push through it to safety. The door was locked from the inside. Emmett grabbed the handle and yanked. Nothing. The metal burned his palm, and he jerked back with a hiss of pain. The girl saw him. Her eyes locked onto his face through the window, and her expression transformed from hopeless terror to desperate hope. She lunged toward the door, stumbling over a fallen desk, and started pounding on the wood. Help, her lips formed. Please help. Emmett looked around frantically. The hallway was filling with smoke. In minutes, maybe seconds, he wouldn't be able to breathe. He needed to get out, needed to run, get help. Let someone else handle this. Someone trained, someone who knew what they were doing. But there wasn't time. The flames were spreading too fast. By the time he got help, that girl would be dead. His eyes fell on the fire extinguisher mounted on the wall 10 feet away. He ran for it, ripped it from its bracket. Heavy, heavier than he had expected. He staggered back to the door and swung the metal cylinder at the handle. The first impact did nothing except send shockwaves of pain through his arms. The second made a dent. The third, with every ounce of strength Emmett possessed, shattered the lock mechanism. The door flew inward. Smoke exploded out, followed by a wave of heat that nearly knocked Emmett backward. He dropped the extinguisher and lunged into the room, arm over his face. "Here," he shouted, voice breaking. "Come here." The girl was frozen, coughing so hard she doubled over. Emmett grabbed her arm and pulled. She stumbled, nearly fell. He caught her, his arm around her shoulders, half carrying her toward the door. Behind them, something exploded. A computer maybe, or an overhead projector. The concussive force threw them both forward. Emmett twisted, wrapping his arms around the girl's head, taking the impact against his own back as they tumbled out into the hallway. Pain bloomed across his shoulders, but he didn't stop. Couldn't stop. "Move!" he gasped, dragging the girl to her feet. "We have to move." She nodded, tears streaming down her soot-stained face, and they ran. The hallway was an obstacle course. Smoke obscured everything. Emmett kept one hand on the wall, navigating by memory and touch. The girl clung to his shirt, coughing so hard she could barely walk. He pulled her along, supporting her weight, moving toward where the stairs should be. They hit the stairwell and half fell down the first few steps. Emmett caught himself on the railing, caught the girl before she tumbled further. The smoke was thinner here, breathable. "Can you walk?" he asked. She nodded, still coughing. They descended more carefully. First floor. The exit was close. Emmett could see it through the smoke, the south door he'd entered through gray morning light, visible beyond the glass. 20 feet, 15, 10. The fire alarm finally triggered. The sound was deafening, piercing through everything. Sprinklers activated, drenching them in cold water. Too late to help, but shocking enough to make the girl cry out. Emmett pushed through the south door, and they burst into the morning air. Cold, clean, real. They collapsed on the grass, coughing, gasping, alive. Emmett rolled onto his back, chest heaving. Every breath felt like swallowing razors. His hands throbbed where the door handle had burned them. His shoulders ached from the explosion. But he was breathing. They were both breathing. The girl curled beside him, sobbing and coughing in equal measure. Emmett wanted to comfort her, to say something reassuring, but he didn't have the breath. Around them, the world erupted into chaos. Teachers arriving for early meetings saw the smoke and started screaming. Someone ran for the main office to call 911. Students being dropped off for morning band practice pointed at the building phones already out filming. Emmett tried to sit up. His vision swam. He blinked hard, fighting through the dizziness. The girl grabbed his shirt with trembling fingers. Her eyes, red from smoke, locked onto his. "You," she whispered, voice raw. "You saved me." Emmett shook his head. Couldn't process that. Couldn't think about what he'd just done or why. "Are you hurt? Can you breathe?" "I think so. She broke off, coughing again. Footsteps pounded toward them. A teacher, Miss Rodriguez from the math department, dropped to her knees beside them. "Oh my God. Oh my God. Are you two okay? Don't move. Don't move. Someone call an ambulance." More teachers surrounded them. Someone draped a blanket over Emmett's shoulders. Someone else was talking to the girl, checking her for injuries. Emergency sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Emmett let himself sink back onto the grass. The sky above was gray, heavy with clouds that promised rain. He watched it, let the cold air fill his lungs, and tried to understand what had just happened. He'd run into a burning building. He'd saved someone's life. He, Emmett Webb, the invisible boy, had done something that mattered. The thought was too big to hold. Then another sound joined the sirens. Different, deeper. A rumble that made the ground beneath him vibrate. Motorcycle engines. Not one or two, many. Emmett turned his head, watching as they appeared around the corner of the school building. 12 motorcycles in tight formation, chrome gleaming even in the gray morning light. They roared into the parking lot, and every rider wore the same thing. Black leather jackets, and on the back, visible even from a distance, a patch, a skull with wings. He'd seen that symbol before, on television, in news reports about gang violence and drug trafficking and everything his mother had warned him to stay away from. Hell's Angels. The lead motorcycle stopped. The rider, massive and intimidating with shoulders like a linebacker and arms covered in tattoos, killed his engine. He removed his helmet, revealing a face carved from granite, gray streaked through his dark hair and close-cropped beard. Maybe 45, maybe older. Hard to tell with men who looked like they'd been forged from violence. His eyes swept the scene, the burning building, the crowd of teachers and students. Then they landed on the girl lying on the grass, and everything about him changed. The hard mask cracked. Fear replaced it, raw, undiluted terror. Delilah, he breathed. Then louder, breaking into a run. Delilah! The girl turned her head. Daddy. The man, this intimidating wall of muscle and leather, dropped to his knees beside her so hard Emmett heard the impact. His hands, scarred and huge, reached for her with a gentleness that seemed impossible. Baby, baby, are you okay? Are you hurt? His voice cracked on every word. I'm okay, the girl Delilah sobbed. Daddy, I'm okay. He saved me. The man pulled her into his arms, cradling her against his chest. His eyes squeezed shut, and Emmett saw something he never expected to see on a Hell's Angel's face. Tears. The other bikers had dismounted, forming a protective circle around them. They were silent, watchful, but the tension in their bodies spoke volumes. This wasn't just a girl hurt in a fire. This was their president's daughter. After a long moment, the man opened his eyes. They were red-rimmed, still wet, but steady. He looked at Emmett over Delilah's head. You, he said quietly, you pulled her out. It wasn't a question. Emmett nodded anyway. The man stared at him. Really stared. Taking in the soot-covered face, the too thin frame, the bare feet, the burns on Emmett's palms. Understanding dawned slowly in his expression. What's your name, son? Emmett's throat was raw. He had to swallow twice before he could speak. Emmett Webb. Emmett? The man repeated it like he was memorizing it. I'm Garrett Morrison. People call me Hawk, and you just saved my daughter's life. Emmett didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know how to respond to the weight in those words. Sirens screamed closer. Fire trucks appeared, followed by ambulances, followed by police cars. The parking lot became a storm of flashing lights and shouted orders. Paramedics descended. One team went to Delilah, another to Emmett. Someone strapped an oxygen mask over his face. Someone else examined his hands, his back, his feet. Questions came at him from every direction. Are you hurt? Can you breathe? What's your name? Where are your parents? Why were you here so early? How did you get inside? Emmett answered what he could, avoided what he couldn't. He watched as Delilah was loaded onto a gurney, Hawk refusing to leave her side. The man's hand never left his daughter's, even as paramedics worked around him. One of the EMTs, a woman with kind eyes, crouched in front of Emmett. Son, we need to take you to the hospital. Get your lungs checked, treat those burns. Is there someone we can call, parents, guardian? Emmett's stomach clenched. Here it came. The questions he couldn't answer without destroying the fragile invisibility he'd maintained. I'm okay, he said. I don't need to go. You have smoke inhalation and second-degree burns. You're going to the hospital. Not unkindly, but firmly. Who should we call? Emmett looked down. His hands were blistered and red where the door handle had burned him. They hurt. Everything hurt. But the hospital meant records, meant social services, meant questions he couldn't answer without ending up back in a foster home. I don't have anyone, he said quietly. The EMT's expression softened. Okay, that's okay. We'll figure it out. Right now, let's just get you looked at. They guided him toward an ambulance. Emmett went without resistance, too tired to fight. As they reached the vehicle, Hawk appeared beside them. He's going to Mercy General, Hawk asked the EMT. Yes, sir. So is my daughter. We'll be right behind you. The EMT nodded, helped Emmett into the ambulance. As they closed the doors, Emmett saw Hawk signal to his brothers. Watched as all 12 motorcycles lined up behind the ambulance carrying Delilah. An escort. A statement. This child matters, those motorcycles said. This child is protected. The ambulance carrying Emmett pulled out, siren wailing. In the side mirror, Emmett could see them. 12 Hell's Angels following in perfect formation, and at the lead, Garrett Hawk Morrison riding like a man chasing something precious. Emmett closed his eyes, let the oxygen mask feed clean air into his damaged lungs, and wondered what he'd just stumbled into. The hospital was chaos wrapped in efficiency. Emmett was wheeled through emergency intake processed with the kind of swift professionalism that came from dealing with trauma daily. Nurses took his vitals. Doctors examined his lungs, his hands, his back. Someone cleaned his feet, wrapped them in gauze. Someone else started an IV. Through it all, Emmett answered questions with carefully constructed half-truths. Yes, he'd been near the school. No, he didn't know what started the fire. Yes, he'd seen the girl trapped. No, he hadn't thought about the danger. They kept asking about parents, guardian, emergency contact, anyone they could call. Each time Emmet's answer was the same: there's no one. Eventually, they stopped asking and focused on treatment. His lungs were irritated but functional. The burns would heal. He was malnourished and dehydrated, but stable. Lucky, one doctor said. Incredibly lucky. Emmett didn't feel lucky. He felt exhausted and overwhelmed and terrified about what came next. They moved him to a semi-private room in the pediatric ward. The bed next to his was empty. The curtain between them hung half open, giving him a view of the door and the hallway beyond. He could hear Delilah in another room crying softly, Hawk's deep voice murmuring reassurance. A nurse brought him juice and crackers, real food. His stomach cramped at the sight of it, suddenly ravenous and nauseous at the same time. He ate slowly, forcing himself not to devour everything at once. The door opened. Hawk stepped through. He looked different without the motorcycle and the leather jacket. Almost normal in jeans and a plain black t-shirt. But there was nothing normal about the intensity in his eyes as he looked at Emmett. "Can I come in?" Hawk asked. Emmett nodded. Hawk pulled a chair close to the bed and sat at elbows on his knees, hands clasped. For a long moment, he just looked at Emmett, studying him the way someone might study a puzzle they couldn't quite solve. "Delilah's stable," Hawk said finally. "Docs say her lungs are clear. She'll be okay, thanks to you." "I'm glad," Emmett said. And he was. The relief was almost overwhelming. The fire chief came by, gave me a preliminary report. Hawk's jaw tightened. That fire wasn't an accident. Someone said it. East Wing, multiple points of ignition, accelerant, professional job. Emmett's blood went cold. Someone tried to burn down the school. Someone tried to burn down that specific classroom. Delilah's classroom. Hawk's hands clenched into fists. She shouldn't have been there. School doesn't start for hours, but she's been struggling since her mom died, so I've been dropping her off early. She does homework in the library before first period, has a key to her teacher's classroom, likes to sit in there when it's quiet. Understanding crashed over Emmett. They knew she'd be there. Yeah, the single word carried a weight of fury. They knew. Who's they? Hawk looked at him for a long moment, clearly deciding how much to say. You know what the Hells Angels are. Motorcycle club, Emmett said carefully. That's the polite term. The real term is outlaw motorcycle gang. We operate outside the law, handle business the law won't touch, protect our own when the system fails. Hawk's voice was matter of fact. Most of what you hear about us is exaggerated. Some of it's true. All of it makes us enemies. Emmett waited. There's another club, the Vipers. We've been at war with them for territory, for business for a decade. Thought we'd reached a truce. Hawk's expression hardened. Guess I was wrong. They went after your daughter. They went after my daughter, Hawk confirmed. Knew the best way to hurt me wasn't through violence. It was through her, through Delilah. Emmett thought about the fire, the multiple ignition points, the professional execution. But I was there too, sleeping behind the dumpster. If the fire had spread different, I could have. He stopped. Hawk was staring at him. You were sleeping behind the school. Too late, Emmett realized what he'd revealed. He looked down at his bandaged hands. How long? Hawk asked quietly. 7 months. The silence that followed was heavy. When Emmett finally looked up, Hawk's expression had shifted into something complicated. Anger not at Emmett, sympathy, recognition. Where's your family, Emmett? Dead. Mom died 8 months ago. Cancer. No dad. No other family who wants me. Foster care. Emmett's jaw tightened. Tried it. Once was enough. Hawk nodded slowly like he understood more than Emmett had said. So you've been on the streets. 13 years old surviving alone. I'm fine. Kid, you were sleeping behind a school in October. You're not fine. Hawk leaned forward. But you're tough, and you've got a hell of a lot of heart, running into that fire the way you did. Anyone would have. No, most people would have called for help and waited. You acted. Hawk's voice dropped. That matters, Emmett. The kind of person you are that matters. Emmett didn't know what to say to that. Hawk stood, walked to the window, looked out at the parking lot where his brothers were waiting. Here's the situation. The Vipers know their attempt failed. They know Delilah's alive, and they know you're the reason why. Fear spiked through Emmett's chest. They're going to come after me. Maybe. Probably. Hawk turned back, which is why I'm offering you a choice. You can walk out of here when the docks clear you. Go back to sleeping behind schools. Take your chances. Or you come with us. Stay at the clubhouse. Get protection until we handle this. Emmett stared at him. You want me to stay with the Hells Angels. I want you somewhere safe. And right now the safest place for you is with people who have a vested interest in keeping you breathing. Hawk crossed his arms. Look, I know what you're thinking. Everything you've heard about motorcycle clubs. Most of it's designed to make us look like monsters. We're not saints, but we're not what the news says either. We protect our own. And you saved my daughter, which makes you one of ours. I don't know anything about your world. You'll learn, if you want to. Hawk's expression softened slightly. Or if you'd rather, I can get you into a group home, somewhere legitimate. Make some calls, pull some strings. But Emmett, I'm not going to lie to you. Foster care is a gamble. Sometimes you get good people. Sometimes you get the Hendersons. Emmett's head snapped up. How did you? You flinched when I mentioned foster care. Got a look in your eyes like someone who's seen bad things behind closed doors. I've seen that look before. Hawk's voice was gentle. I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to trust that I'll keep you safe while we figure out what comes next. That's all. Just safety and time to breathe. Emmett looked down at his bandaged hands, thought about the dumpster, the cold, the constant fear, the invisibility that kept him alive but made him feel like he was fading away. Then he thought about Delilah's face in that classroom window, the way she looked at him after like he was someone who mattered. You saved me. When was the last time he'd mattered to anyone? Okay, Emmett said quietly. Okay, I'll come with you. Hawk nodded once satisfied. Good, I'll let the social worker know you're being released into my temporary custody. We'll figure out the legal stuff later. Just like that. Just like that. Hawk headed for the door, paused. Emmett, one more thing. You're not invisible anymore. I see you, my brother see you, Delilah sees you. Get used to it. The door closed behind him. Emmett sat in the hospital bed, A.V. still in his arm, and tried to process everything. An hour ago, he'd been homeless and forgotten. Now he was under the protection of the Hells Angels, protected from a motorcycle gang that had tried to kill a child, protected by outlaws who operated outside the law. It should have terrified him. Maybe it did, but it also felt like the first time in 8 months that someone had actually looked at him and seen another human being instead of a problem to be solved or ignored. The curtain between his bed and the next rustled. Delilah appeared wheeling an IV pole, wearing a hospital gown too big for her small frame. Her blonde braids were gone, hair loose around her shoulders. Without the soot and terror, she looked younger than 11, fragile, but her eyes were steady. "Hi," she said. "Hi, you're supposed to be resting." "So are you." She sat carefully on the edge of his bed. "The nurses said you don't have a family." Emmett tensed. "I'm fine. I didn't have anyone either after Mom died. I mean, I have Dad, but no one who understood what it feels like to lose someone like that." Delilah picked at the hospital blanket. "Everyone kept telling me I'd be okay. That time heals, but they didn't know. They didn't get it." "Yeah," Emmett said quietly. "I'm glad you're coming to stay with us. Your dad told you." "He tells me everything, even the scary stuff." She looked up at him. "I know the Vipers are dangerous. I know they're going to try again. But Dad's the best. And all my uncles, they won't let anything happen to us." "Your uncles, the club, that's what I call them. Uncle Spike, Uncle Jax, Uncle Raven. They're not really my uncles, but they've been around since I was little." Delilah smiled slightly. "They're going to love you. You ran into a fire. That's like the most angel thing ever." Emmett couldn't help it. He laughed. It hurt his throat, made him cough, but it felt good. "I don't think I'm angel material." "You saved someone when you didn't have to, when it cost you something. That's exactly what angels do." Delilah's expression turned serious. "Thank you, Emmett, for not leaving me in there, for not being like everyone else who walks by without seeing." The weight of her gratitude was almost too much. Emmett looked away. "I saw you. I couldn't just walk away." "I know. That's why you're not like everyone else." A nurse appeared in the doorway. "Delilah Morrison, back to your room. Now, doctor's orders." Delilah stood obediently. "I'll see you at the clubhouse," she said to Emmett. Then softer, "I'm really glad you're okay." She wheeled her IV pole back to her room. The nurse followed, shaking her head but smiling. Emmett lay back against the pillows. Through the window, he could see the parking lot. The Hells Angels were still there, bikes lined up in perfect formation, waiting. One of them, a bald man with a scarred face, looked up at the window, saw Emmett watching, raised a hand in acknowledgement. Emmett raised his bandaged hand back. He'd gone from invisible to protected in the span of 3 hours. From forgotten to valued. It didn't make sense. It shouldn't be real. But lying in that hospital bed, warm and fed, and seeing Emmett let himself believe it might be. Just for now, just for this moment. He was going to be okay. The hospital released them both that afternoon. Delilah first wrapped in a jacket 3 sizes too big, probably belonging to one of Hawk's brothers. Then Emmett dressed in donated clothes from the hospital's charity closet. Jeans that actually fit, a warm hoodie, socks, shoes that were only slightly too big. When he walked out into the waiting room, the Hells Angels were there, all 12 of them, filling the space with their presence. They weren't doing anything threatening, just sitting, standing, waiting. But the other families in the waiting room gave them a wide berth anyway. Hawk stood when he saw Emmett Delilah's hand tucked safely in his. "Ready." Emmett nodded. "Good. Let's go home." Home. The word echoed strangely. Emmett didn't have a home, hadn't had one in 8 months, but he followed Hawk out into the parking lot, Delilah walking between them. The motorcycles gleamed in the afternoon sun. Hawk led Delilah to his bike, helped her settle behind him, made sure her grip was secure. Then he looked at Emmett. "You ever ridden before?" "No, sir." One of the other angels, the bald man with the scarred face, stepped forward. "He can ride with me." Named Spike. Up close, Spike looked even more intimidating. 6'4", maybe 250 muscles earned from hard labor rather than a gym. The scar ran from his left eyebrow to his jaw, twisting through tissue that had healed badly. But his eyes, when they met Emmett's, were kind. "Don't worry, kid. I've been riding since before you were born. You're safe with me." Spike handed Emmett a helmet. "Just hold on, lean with me on turns, and try not to puke on my jacket." Emmett managed a weak smile. I'll try. The helmet was too big, but Spike adjusted the strap until it fit. Then he swung onto his bike with practiced ease and gestured for Emmett to climb on behind him. Emmett had never been on a motorcycle, never been on anything more powerful than a bicycle. The engine rumbling beneath him felt alive, dangerous, barely contained. He gripped Spike's jacket hard, hammering. "You good?" Spike called over his shoulder. "Yeah, then let's ride." The engine roared, the bike moved, and suddenly they were flying. Not literally, but it felt that way. The world blurred past. Wind whipped around the helmet. The rumble of the engine vibrated through Emmett's entire body. It was terrifying and exhilarating and completely overwhelming. Ahead of them, Hawk led the formation. Behind them, the rest of the angels followed in perfect synchronization. They moved as one unit, a statement of solidarity and strength. They rode through Riverside, past the downtown shops and restaurants, past the neighborhoods where Emmett used to live before the cancer and the medical bills. People stopped and stared. Some pointed, some looked afraid. Others looked impressed. Emmett held on to Spike and tried to process this new reality. 3 hours ago, he'd been invisible. Now he was part of a Hells Angels convoy, visible to everyone whether he wanted to be or not. They left the main streets behind, heading into the industrial area on the west side of town. Warehouses and auto shops gave way to empty lots and chain-link fences. Then Spike turned down a gravel road, and ahead Emmett saw it. The clubhouse. It looked like a fortress. High fence topped with razor wire. Security cameras mounted at every corner. The building itself was low and sprawling, made of concrete block and corrugated metal. Not pretty, but solid, defensible. A gate swung open as they approached. Someone inside had been watching, waiting. They rode through into a large courtyard, motorcycles parked in neat rows, a few cars, a truck with the club's logo painted on the side. The bikes came to a stop, engines cut off one by one until the only sound was the settling tick of cooling metal. Emmett climbed off carefully, legs shaking. His first motorcycle ride. Not his last, probably, if he was staying here. Delilah was already off Hawk's bike, looking around the courtyard like a princess surveying her kingdom. This was her world. She belonged here. Emmett had never felt more out of place. Hawk approached, reading his expression easily. "I know it looks rough, but inside's different. Come on." He led them through a heavy steel door into the clubhouse proper, and Hawk was right. Inside was different. The main room was huge and surprisingly comfortable. Worn leather couches arranged around a stone fireplace. A long bar against one wall, bottles gleaming on shelves behind it. Pool tables in the corner. A massive TV mounted above the fireplace. Photos covered the walls, decades of brotherhood captured in faded images. Group shots at rallies. Individual portraits of members, some with dates underneath that made Emmett realize they were memorials. These were the brothers who hadn't made it. "This is the common room," Hawk explained. "Kitchens through that door, bathrooms down that hall, chapels off limits unless you're a member. Bedrooms are upstairs." More angels were inside, emerging from various rooms to see who'd arrived. They nodded to Hawk, studied Emmett with unconcealed curiosity. A woman appeared from the kitchen, maybe 35, with dark hair and tattoos covering both arms. "Hawk, Delilah's home safe." "Safe," Hawk confirmed. "Thanks for holding down the fort, Maggie." Maggie's eyes moved to Emmett. "This the kid?" "This is Emmett Webb." "Emmett, this is Maggie. She runs the office, handles the books, keeps us all from killing each other." Maggie's smile was warm. "Heard what you did. That took guts." Emmett didn't know how to respond. Settled for a quiet thank you. "You hungry? I've got chili going." The mention of food made Emmett's stomach clench. He'd had crackers at the hospital, but that was hours ago. "Yeah, I'm hungry." "Good. Delilah, show him where to wash up. Dinner in 10. Delilah grabbed Emmett's hand and pulled him toward the hallway. Come on, I'll show you around. She led him through the clubhouse with the confidence of someone who'd grown up here. Pointed out the bathrooms, the storage rooms, the room where they kept tools and bike parts. Upstairs, she showed him the bedroom wing. Dad's room is at the end. Mine's next to his. The guest rooms are here and here. She opened a door. This one's yours. The room was small but clean. Single bed with a thick quilt, a dresser, a window that looked out onto the courtyard. Not much, but to Emmett, who'd been sleeping on concrete for 7 months, it looked like luxury. There's clothes in the dresser, Delilah said. Probably won't fit perfect, but better than hospital donations. Bathrooms across the hall. Showers all yours whenever you want. A shower. Emmett hadn't had a real shower in months. The thought was almost overwhelming. Thank you, he said. Delilah smiled. You keep thanking people. You don't have to. This is just how family works. Before Emmett could process that she was gone, heading back downstairs, Emmett stood in the doorway of his room. His room. Even temporarily, the concept felt foreign. He stepped inside, closed the door, and for the first time in months, he was alone in a space that was safe and warm in his. He sat on the bed. It was soft, real mattress, real pillows. He could lie down and sleep without worrying about police or weather or someone stealing his few possessions. His backpack. Where was his backpack? Panic spiked before he remembered. He'd left it behind the dumpster. His notebook. The one connection to his mother, to his old life. Gone. Emmett's chest tightened. He'd lost so much already. The notebook felt like the last piece of her, and he'd left it behind in the chaos. A knock on the door interrupted his spiral. Yeah, Spike stepped in, holding a familiar battered backpack. Found this behind the school. Figured it was yours. Emmett stood so fast he nearly fell over. You went back, sent a prospect. Figured you might want your stuff. Spike handed over the backpack. Checked to make sure nothing was missing. All there. Emmett unzipped the bag. His notebook sat on top, slightly damp from the sprinklers, but intact. Relief crashed over him so hard he had to sit back down. Thank you, he managed. No problem, kid. Spike lingered in the doorway. For what it's worth, you did good today. Real good. Not many people would have done what you did. I didn't think about it. That's what makes it count. Spike knocked twice on the doorframe. Dinner's ready. Come eat. Emmett followed him downstairs. The common room had filled with angels, maybe 20 men total. They'd pushed tables together, creating one long surface loaded with food. Chili cornbread, salad, beer for the adults, and soda for Delilah. Hawk gestured to an empty chair next to Delilah. Sit. Eat. Emmett sat. Someone passed him a bowl of chili. Someone else dropped cornbread onto his plate. The portions were huge, more food than he'd seen in one place in months. He ate slowly, trying not to draw attention to how hungry he was. But the angels noticed anyway. They just didn't comment. Instead, they kept the conversation flowing around him, talking about bikes, about work, about the fire. Police have any leads? One of them, a guy called Jax with sharp eyes and sharper features, asked Hawk. Not yet. Fire marshal confirmed multiple ignition points. Professional accelerant. No witnesses besides Emmett and Delilah. Hawk's jaw tightened. They're treating it as attempted murder. The table went quiet. What about the Vipers? Another angel asked. Can't prove anything yet, but we all know it was them. So what's the plan? Hawk looked around the table. We protect our own. Delilah doesn't go anywhere without an escort. We rotate watch on the clubhouse, and we wait for them to make their next move. And the kid? Jax nodded toward Emmett. The kid stays here, under protection. He's a witness, and he's the reason Delilah's alive. That makes him family. Emmett felt every eye shift to him. The weight of their attention was heavy, assessing. These were men who'd spent their lives in a world Emmett didn't understand. Men who'd seen violence and chosen to live by their own rules. But looking around the table, Emmett didn't see monsters. He saw tired fathers and uncles and brothers, men who worked hard jobs and came home to this clubhouse that was more home than the houses they owned. Men who chose each other when the world tried to tear them apart. Emmett, Hawk said, drawing his attention, you understand what this means. Staying here. I think so. The Vipers will figure out you're with us. They'll see it as a statement. They might come after you to get to me. I know. And you're still willing to stay. Emmett thought about the alternative. Back to the streets. Back to invisibility. Back to being alone. Then he looked at Delilah, who smiled at him with complete trust. Yeah, Emmett said, I'm staying. Hawk nodded once satisfied. Then welcome to the family. The angels around the table raised their beers. To family, someone called. To family, they echoed. Emmett raised his soda feeling awkward and out of place, but also for the first time in 8 months, like he belonged somewhere. After dinner, Delilah dragged him to the couch to watch TV. Some action movie he'd never seen, explosions and car chases that seemed absurd after the real danger of the day. But she seemed to need the normalcy, so he sat with her, watching without really watching. Hawk appeared after a while, settling into the chair across from them. Delilah, bedtime in 30 minutes. Dad, it's barely 8. You were in a fire, you need rest. She grumbled, but didn't argue. When the movie ended, she stood, hugged her father, then surprised Emmett by hugging him too. Good night, Emmett. I'm really glad you're here. Me too, he found himself saying. She headed upstairs. Hawk watched her go, then turned to Emmett. You okay, really? I don't know, Emmett admitted. This is a lot. It is, but you don't have to figure it all out tonight. Hawk leaned forward. Tomorrow we'll talk about school, about getting you legal documents, about what comes next. Tonight, just rest. You're safe here. I promise you that. Emmett wanted to believe him. Can I ask you something? Anything. Why are you doing this? I'm nobody. Just some homeless kid who happened to be in the right place. Hawk was quiet for a moment. You remind me of someone. My younger brother, David. He died 11 years ago, before Delilah was born. Emmett's breath caught. David Webb, his father. David had this thing about helping people. Couldn't walk past someone in trouble without stepping in. Got him killed, eventually protecting a woman and her kid from a rival gang. Hawk's voice was heavy with old grief. I never knew what happened to them. The woman or the kid. They disappeared into the system. Emmett's hands trembled. He gripped them together, trying to stay calm. Seeing you today running into that fire without thinking. You've got David's heart. That reckless, beautiful willingness to sacrifice for someone you don't even know. Hawk met his eyes. I couldn't save David, but I can damn sure protect you. And that's what I'm going to do. Emmett should reveal that David was his father, that Hawk was talking about Emmett's own mother. But the words stuck in his throat. Because if he told, everything would change. Hawk would keep him out of obligation, out of guilt, out of connection to a dead brother. Emmett didn't want that. He wanted to be chosen for himself, not for his bloodline. So he swallowed the truth and said, thank you for everything. Hawk stood, placed a hand on Emmett's shoulder. Get some sleep, kid. Tomorrow's a new day. Emmett headed upstairs to his room. The bed was still soft, still real. He changed into borrowed pajamas, climbed under the quilt, and lay there in the darkness, processing everything. From homeless to protected, from invisible to valued, from alone to family. It didn't make sense. It shouldn't be real. But lying in that warm bed, safe behind steel doors and surrounded by people who'd chosen to keep him, Emmett finally let himself believe it. He pulled out his notebook, found a pen in the nightstand drawer, and wrote by the light from the hallway. October 16th night. Mom, I don't know if you can hear me. I don't know if any of this makes sense. But today I saved a girl from a fire, and her father saved me right back. He's Hawk Morrison, David's brother, your David. He doesn't know who I am yet. I don't know if I'll tell him. But Mom, I'm not invisible anymore. I'm not alone. I have a bed and food and people who see me, people who want me here. I think maybe this is what you meant when you said I'd be okay. Not that everything would be fine, but that I'd find a place, that I'd matter to someone. I matter here. I love you, I miss you, but I think I'm going to be okay. He closed the notebook, turned off the light, and let sleep pull him under. For the first time in 8 months, Emmett Webb slept through the night. Morning came with sounds Emmett had never associated with waking. Not sirens or garbage trucks or the shuffle of early commuters. Instead, the rumble of motorcycle engines warming up, the smell of coffee and bacon, low voices discussing the day ahead. He lay in bed for a moment disoriented before memory flooded back. The fire, Delilah, the Hell's Angels, this room, this bed, this new reality. Emmett sat up slowly. His body ached from yesterday's trauma. Burns on his palms, soreness in his shoulders, rawness in his throat from the smoke. But he was warm, clean, alive. A knock on the door. Yeah, Delilah's voice came through. Breakfast in 10 minutes. Dad says don't make him come get you. Emmett smiled despite himself. I'll be down. He dressed quickly in clothes from the dresser. They fit surprisingly well. Someone had guessed his size correctly. When he emerged into the hallway, he could hear activity downstairs. The clubhouse was alive with morning energy. In the common room, angels were scattered across couches and chairs, coffee mugs in hand. Some were dressed for work, regular clothes that made them look almost normal. Others wore their leather cuts, the vests that proclaimed their membership and rank. Hawk stood at the kitchen counter plating food. When he saw Emmett, he gestured to the table. Sit, eat. Emmett sat. Hawk placed a plate in front of him loaded with eggs, bacon, toast. Real breakfast, the kind his mother used to make on weekends when money wasn't so tight. Sleep okay? Hawk asked. Best I've slept in months. Good. Hawk poured coffee, added cream and sugar, slid it across. We need to talk about logistics. You can't go back to Franklin Middle. Too exposed. Too many questions. Emmett's stomach sank. He'd expected this. So what happens? There's a school on the north side, Riverside North Middle. Better security, and we've got connections there. Principal owes me a favor. Hawk sat across from him. I'll get you enrolled under our protection. Official guardian paperwork is being fast-tracked. That fast, I know people. Hawk's expression was matter of fact. Social services are willing to work with us given the circumstances. You're a witness to attempted murder. Staying with me is the safest option. Delilah appeared still in pajamas and climbed into the chair next to Emmett. Are you talking about school? Emmett should come to North with me. That's the plan, Hawk confirmed. She brightened. Good, I'll show you around, introduce you to people. The casual way she said it, like having Emmett join her school, was the most natural thing in the world, made his chest tight. He'd spent 7 months being invisible. Now a girl he'd known for less than 24 hours was planning his social integration. Spike wandered in looking remarkably awake for 6 in the morning. Morning, kid, how's the hands? Emmett flexed his bandaged palms. Sore, but okay. Good. You'll want those healed before we teach you to ride. Ride? Emmett blinked. Can't be part of this family and not know how to handle a bike. Spike grabbed coffee. Give it a few weeks for recovery, then we'll start lessons. The idea of riding a motorcycle, of having that kind of freedom and power seemed impossible. But looking around at the angels who'd welcomed him without question, Emmett started to believe maybe it wasn't. After breakfast, Hawk had business to attend to. He left Emmett with Delilah and strict instructions not to leave the clubhouse grounds. The Vipers were still out there, still a threat. Delilah took him on a proper tour, showed him the workshop where they repaired bikes, the storage room full of tools and parts, the small office where Maggie managed the club's legitimate businesses. Everything was organized professional, not what Emmett had expected from an outlaw motorcycle gang. People think we're all criminals, Delilah said, reading his expression. But Dad runs construction crews. Spike owns an auto shop. Jax does security consulting. They have real jobs and real lives. The club is family, not some gang like on TV. But your dad said they operate outside the law. Sometimes, when the law fails people. Delilah climbed onto a workbench, legs swinging. There was this woman last year. Her ex-husband was stalking her. Police couldn't do anything because he hadn't technically broken any laws. He was just always there, watching, threatening. The woman was terrified. What happened? Dad and the guys paid the ex a visit, explained that if he came near her again, there'd be consequences. He moved 2 states away the next week. Delilah's voice was matter of fact. The law couldn't protect her. We could. Emmett understood the moral complexity there. Vigilante justice was still justice, even if it operated in gray areas. Did you grow up here in the clubhouse? Sort of. I spent a lot of time here when I was little. Mom and Dad had a house in town, but after she died, Dad sold it. Too many memories. We've lived here full time for the past year. Do you like it? Delilah considered. It's different. I miss having my own space sometimes. But I also like being surrounded by people who care. After Mom died, I felt alone, even when Dad was right there. Here, I'm never alone. Emmett understood that too. Loneliness wasn't about physical proximity. It was about connection, about being seen. They spent the morning exploring the clubhouse grounds. The courtyard had a basketball hoop that had seen better days. Delilah challenged him to a game, and despite his injuries, Emmett found himself laughing as she trash-talked her way to victory. You let me win, she accused. You won fair and square, liar. But she was grinning. Around noon, the gates opened and several motorcycles roared in, angels returning from morning business. Among them was someone Emmett hadn't met yet, tall, wiry, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Hawk emerged from the office to greet them. Raven, how'd it go? The man called. Raven dismounted smoothly. Intel confirmed. Vipers are planning something. Don't know what yet, but there's movement. Increased activity around their clubhouse. New faces. Hawk's expression hardened. Escalation. Looks like. Raven's eyes shifted to Emmett. This the kid. Emmett Webb. Emmett, this is Raven. He handles intelligence. Raven extended a hand. Emmett shook it carefully, mindful of his burns. Heard what you did. Took guts. Everyone keeps saying that. Because it's true. Raven turned back to Hawk. We need to talk. Chapel. The word chapel carried weight. Emmett remembered Hawk mentioning it yesterday. Off limits to non-members. Sacred space. Hawk nodded. 10 minutes. He looked at Delilah and Emmett. Stay close to the clubhouse. Don't wander. They disappeared inside. Emmett watched them go, feeling the shift in energy. This wasn't just a club. This was a military operation, organized and serious. They're going to plan, Delilah said quietly. Plan what? How to protect us. How to end the war with the Vipers. She sat on the steps leading to the clubhouse entrance. This has been building for a while. The Vipers have been pushing into our territory for months. Small things at first. Intimidating business owners we protect. Undercutting our contracts. Dad tried to negotiate. They refused. So it's about business. It's about power. About who controls Riverside. Delilah picked at the fraying hem of her jeans. The fire was them saying they'll do anything to win. even hurt kids. The casual way she said it made Emmett's chest tighten. She'd processed this faster than he had, accepted that people wanted to kill her, that her father's world came with costs she had to pay. Are you scared? He asked. Sometimes, but I have Dad and all my uncles. They won't let anything happen to me. She looked at him. Or to you. You're under protection now. That means something. Emmett wanted to believe her, but he'd spent too long being let down by systems and people who promised safety. Trust didn't come easy anymore. The chapel meeting lasted an hour. When the angels emerged, their expressions were grim but determined. Hawk pulled Emmett and Delilah aside. We're implementing enhanced security. Delilah, you know the drill. Emmett, this means you don't go anywhere without an escort. Not school, not the store, nowhere. Understand? Yeah. Good. Jax is going to set you up with a phone. Keep it on you always, programmed with emergency contacts. A phone. Emmett hadn't had one since his mother died. The thought of being reachable, of having that connection to people who cared, was overwhelming. Jax appeared with a basic smartphone. Nothing fancy, calls, texts, GPS. We need to be able to find you if something goes wrong. Thank you, Emmett managed. Over the next few days, Emmett settled into a routine. Mornings started with breakfast in the common room. Hawk left for his construction business around 7. Maggie arrived to handle office work. Various angels came and went, their schedules dictated by legitimate jobs and club business. Delilah became his guide to this new world. She taught him the hierarchy, who reported to whom, explained the patches on the leather cuts. President, vice president, sergeant at arms, road captain. Each role had meaning, responsibility. She also told him about the unspoken rules. Don't touch another man's bike. Don't question orders from patch members. Don't discuss club business with outsiders. Family first always. Emmett absorbed it all, trying to understand this culture he'd stumbled into. It was like learning a new language. The same words meant different things here. Family wasn't blood. Brother wasn't biological. Home was wherever your club gathered. On the third day, Hawk took him shopping. Real shopping, not digging through donation bins. They went to Target, and Hawk handed Emmett a cart. Get what you need. Clothes, toiletries, whatever. Don't worry about price. Emmett stared at the empty cart. I don't have money. I do. That's what matters. Hawk's tone left no room for argument. You're under my roof. That makes you my responsibility. Now shop. It felt surreal walking through aisles, picking out jeans and t-shirts and a proper jacket. Hawk added things Emmett didn't think to grab. Good shoes, a warm coat for winter, school supplies for when he enrolled. At checkout, the total made Emmett's stomach drop. Nearly $400. His mother had struggled to spend that much on necessities in a month. Hawk swiped his card without hesitation. It's money, kid. I've got more where that came from. In the parking lot, loading bags into Hawk's truck, Emmett finally found his voice. Why are you doing all this? Hawk paused, hands on a shopping bag. Because you need it. Because you deserve it. Because that's what family does. But I'm not your family. Not really. Hawk turned to face him fully. Emmett, I'm going to tell you something my brother David taught me. Family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up. Who stands beside you when everything goes to hell? Who sees you at your worst and stays anyway? He closed the truck bed. You showed up for Delilah when no one else did. You risked your life for a kid you didn't know. That makes you family. The rest is just paperwork. Emmett looked down, overwhelmed. I don't know how to do this, how to be part of something. Neither did I once. David brought me into the club when I was lost and angry and had nowhere else to go. The angels taught me what brotherhood meant. Hawk's voice was gentle. Now it's my turn to pay that forward, and you don't have to figure it all out today. Just take it one day at a time. That night, Emmett sat in his room with his new belongings spread across the bed. Real clothes, real shoes, a toothbrush that was his and his alone. Small things that meant everything. He pulled out his notebook, the pages still slightly warped from the sprinkler water, and wrote, "Mom, I'm learning what it means to be part of something bigger than myself. Hawk took me shopping today. Spent money on me like it was nothing, like I was worth it. I'm still not used to that, to being valued. The angels have this thing. They call it brotherhood. It's about loyalty and sacrifice and choosing to stand together even when it's hard. I think maybe that's what you and David had, that kind of love that transcends everything else. I still haven't told Hawk who I am. Part of me wants to. Part of me is terrified he'll change once he knows that this will all become about obligation instead of choice. Maybe I'm selfish for keeping it secret, but I need to know I belong here because of who I am, not because of who my father was. I miss you, but I think I'm starting to understand what you meant about family." On the fourth day, Hawk sat Emmett down for a serious conversation. "Tomorrow we're going to meet with social services. They need to interview you, assess the situation, make sure you're being cared for properly." Emmett's stomach clenched. What if they say I can't stay? They won't. I've got a lawyer handling the legal side, but Emmett, they're going to ask you questions about your life before, about the Hendersons, about why you chose the streets over foster care. What should I say? The truth. They need to understand what you've been through to understand why this arrangement is the best option. Hawk's expression was serious. "I know it's hard. I know dredging up that stuff hurts. But I'll be there with you. You're not alone in this." The meeting was scheduled for 10 the next morning. Emmett barely slept. When dawn came, he dressed carefully in his new clothes, trying to look like a kid who was being properly cared for, which he realized he was. The social services office was downtown, a building Emmett had passed 100 times while homeless. He'd never gone inside, too afraid of what asking for help would cost. Now he walked through the doors with Hawk beside him, and the fear was different. Not fear of the system, but fear of losing what he'd found. The caseworker was a woman named Patricia Chen, no relation to the cafeteria worker who'd helped him. She had kind eyes and a tired smile, the look of someone who'd seen too many broken kids and not enough happy endings. She interviewed Emmett alone first, asked gentle questions about his mother, about the cancer, about what happened after. Emmett answered honestly, feeling the old grief resurface. Then she asked about foster care. Emmett's hands clenched. It was bad, the Hendersons. They said they wanted to help, but they just wanted the state check. Mr. Henderson had a temper and a belt. Patricia's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes sharpened. Did he hurt you? Yeah. Did you report it? Once, to my caseworker. She said I needed to give them a chance, that all families had adjustment periods. Emmett looked down. I gave them 2 weeks. Then I ran. And you've been homeless since 7 months. Patricia made notes. Tell me about Garrett Morrison. How did you meet? Emmett explained the fire, the rescue, Hawk's offer of protection. Told her about the Vipers, about being a witness, about why staying with Hawk made sense. And how has he treated you? Patricia asked. Like I matter. Emmett's voice cracked. He gave me a room and clothes and food. He doesn't make me feel like I owe him. He just wants me to be safe and okay. Do you feel safe with him? Yeah, I do. Patricia nodded, still writing. Then she called Hawk in for his portion of the interview. Emmett waited outside, leg bouncing with nerves. 30 minutes later, they emerged together. Patricia shook Hawk's hand. I'll file my recommendation this afternoon. Given the circumstances and Mr. Morrison's willingness to provide care, I see no reason to remove Emmett from his current placement. We'll schedule follow-up visits, and I'll need to see proof of school enrollment, but this arrangement can continue. Relief crashed over Emmett so hard he nearly collapsed. Hawk's hand landed on his shoulder, steadying him. "Thank you, Ms. Chen." "Take care of him," she said quietly. "He's been through enough." "I will." In the truck afterward, Emmett finally let himself breathe. "It's really okay, I can stay." "You can stay. We'll file for guardianship once the initial assessment period passes. But yeah, kid, you're not going anywhere." Emmett leaned back against the seat, eyes closed, feeling the tension drain from his body. Safe. He was safe. This was real. That night, the clubhouse held an impromptu celebration. Not for Emmett specifically, though. Several angels toasted his successful social services meeting, but for Delilah's birthday, which Emmett had somehow missed in all the chaos. She turned 12 with a cake Maggie had baked, decorations strung across the common room, and a pile of gifts from her extended family of bikers. Practical things mostly: a new jacket, headphones, books she'd mentioned wanting. When it was Emmett's turn to give her a gift, he felt his lack keenly. He had nothing. No money, no way to buy something worthy of the girl who'd welcomed him without question. But Delilah opened his hastily wrapped package, thin and flat, and her eyes went wide. "You drew this." It was a sketch from his notebook, a portrait of her that Emmett had worked on in stolen moments. Not perfect, but honest, capturing something essential about the way she looked when she smiled. "I don't have money for a real gift," Emmett said quietly, "but I wanted to give you something." Delilah hugged the drawing to her chest. "This is perfect. No one's ever drawn me before." She hugged him, suddenly fierce and tight. "Thank you." Watching her hang the portrait on her bedroom wall later, Hawk appeared beside Emmett. "That was a good gift. Personal. From the heart." He paused. "David used to draw too. Had a whole sketchbook full of bikes and buildings and people he knew. Lost it when he died." Emmett's throat tightened. What was he like, David? Hawk's expression softened with memory. Reckless, brilliant, had this way of seeing the good in people even when they had given up on themselves. He believed everyone deserved a second chance, sometimes a third and fourth too. Hawk smiled sadly. Got him killed in the end, but he died protecting someone who needed it. That meant something to him. He sounds like a good person. He was. Best man I ever knew. Hawk looked at Emmett. You remind me of him. Not just the drawing, the way you see people, the way you act without thinking about the P. Emmett wanted to tell him then. Wanted to say, your brother was my father, your blood runs through me. I'm the kid he died protecting. But Delilah called for them to come watch her blow out candles, and the moment passed. Maybe it was better this way. Let Hawk choose to keep him without the weight of obligation. Let their relationship be built on choice, not blood. The following week, Emmett started at Riverside North Middle School. Walking through those doors with Delilah felt surreal. He had a backpack full of new supplies, clean clothes, a lunch packed by Maggie. He looked like every other student. But he wasn't. He was under protection by the Hells Angels. He had a target on his back from the Vipers. And somewhere in this building were kids who'd seen the news coverage who knew who he was. The whispers started immediately. That's the kid who ran into the fire. He's staying with the Angels. I heard the Vipers tried to kill him. Emmett kept his head down, followed Delilah to homeroom and tried to be invisible again. But visibility wasn't something he could shed anymore. At lunch, Delilah introduced him to her friends, a small group of girls who eyed him with curiosity. They asked careful questions about the fire, about living at the clubhouse, about what it was like being protected by bikers. Emmett answered honestly but sparingly. He didn't want to be defined by trauma or by association with the Angels. He just wanted to be normal. But normal was relative. By the end of the first week, Emmett had adapted to the routine. Classes were manageable. Teachers were understanding about his situation. And Delilah's friendship made everything easier. Then Friday happened. Emmett was leaving school waiting for Spike to pick them up when three boys approached. Older, maybe 15 or 16, not students. Their eyes were cold, assessing. Emmett Webb, one asked. Every instinct screamed danger. Emmett positioned himself between them and Delilah. Who's asking? Got a message for you from some friends who think you should mind your own business. The lead boy moved fast, shoving Emmett backward. Emmett stumbled, but didn't fall. His hand went to his phone, the one Jax had given him, with emergency contacts. But before he could dial, a motorcycle roared into the parking lot, then another, then five more. The angels had been watching, waiting for exactly this. Spike dismounted first, crossing the distance to Emmett in three long strides. You boys lost. The lead boy paled, recognizing the cut, the patch, the statement. We were just talking. Looked like more than talking. Raven appeared on the other side, flanking them. You got names I'd like to know, who to send condolences to when you mysteriously disappear. The boys ran, scrambled for their car, and peeled out of the parking lot, tires squealing. Spike checked Emmett over. You hurt? No, they didn't really do anything. They threatened, that's enough. Spike pulled out his phone, dialed. Hawk, we got a problem. Vipers sent kids to the school. Emmett's stomach dropped. This was escalation. The Vipers weren't going to let this go. At the clubhouse, Hawk called an emergency meeting. All available members gathered in the chapel while Emmett and Delilah waited outside. When Hawk emerged an hour later, his expression was grim. We're going on lockdown. No one goes anywhere alone. Schoolwork nowhere. We triple security on the clubhouse. And we send a message that threatening our family has consequences. What kind of message? Emmett asked quietly. Hawk met his eyes, the kind that makes them think twice before trying again. That night, half the angels rode out. Emmett didn't ask where, didn't need to. This was the world he'd chosen by accepting protection. This was the camp. He sat with Delilah in the common room, both of them pretending to watch TV while actually waiting for the angels to return. I'm sorry, Emmett said finally. For what? For bringing this down on you. If I hadn't pulled you out of that fire, none of this would be happening. Delilah turned to face him fully. If you hadn't pulled me out, I'd be dead. Everything happening now, it's because the Vipers are awful people. Not because you saved me, but I'm making it worse. No, you're making it worth fighting for. She grabbed his hand. You're my brother now, Emmett. That's not going to change because things get scary. Brother. The words settled into Emmett's chest, warm and permanent. When the angels returned 3 hours later, they were quiet, somber. Hawk came directly to the common room, still wearing his cut, still carrying the weight of whatever they'd done. He looked at Emmett. It's handled. The Vipers know we're serious. They'll think twice before coming near you or Delilah again. Emmett wanted to ask what handled meant. Wanted to know what violence had been done in his name. But the look in Hawk's eyes said, don't ask questions you don't want answered. So Emmett nodded. Okay. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we start fresh. In his room that night, Emmett couldn't sleep. He pulled out his notebook and stared at the blank page, trying to find words for what he was feeling. Mom, I don't know if you'd approve of this, of me being part of this world. The angels operate in gray areas. They do things the law won't do, things that might be wrong even if they feel necessary. But they're also the only people who've chosen to stand between me and danger, who've made me feel like I belong, like I matter. I think maybe there's no such thing as completely good or completely bad. Just people doing their best with impossible choices. I hope you'd understand. I hope wherever you are, you know I'm trying to be okay. Tomorrow, Hawk wants to talk about something serious. I can tell by the way he's been looking at me. I think he might know. About David. About who I am. I'm scared of what happens when the truth comes out. He closed the notebook as footsteps approached his door. A knock. Yeah. Hawk stepped inside, still in his cut, looking tired. Can't sleep either. Too much in my head. Hawk sat on the edge of the bed. I need to talk to you about something. Been putting it off, but it's time. Emmett's heart hammered. Okay. When you first got here, you mentioned your mother died of cancer, that you never knew your father. Hawk's voice was careful. I need you to tell me your mother's name. Here it was, the moment of truth. Sarah, Emmett whispered. Sarah Webb. Hawk closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were wet. Sarah, David's Sarah. You knew her. I met her once, briefly. She came to the clubhouse looking for David about a year before he died. Told him she was pregnant, asked him to leave the club to be a father to their child. Hawk's voice was thick. David said no. Told her he couldn't leave his brothers. She left and we never saw her again. Emmett's chest ached. His father had chosen the club over him, over his mother. David regretted it, Hawk continued. Talked about her all the time, about the kid he'd never meet. When he died protecting that woman and child, I always wondered if he was trying to make up for abandoning his own family. He died protecting us, Emmett said quietly. The woman was my mom. I was the kid. I was 2 years old. Hawk's face crumpled. Jesus, Emmett! She never told me the details. Just that my father died saving us. That he was a good man who made hard choices. Emmett swallowed hard. I found his name in her things after she died. David Webb. Found the connection to the angels through old photos. Why didn't you tell me? Because I needed to know you wanted me here for me. Not because of some debt to David. Not because I'm his son. Emmett met Hawk's eyes. I needed to belong because I matter, not because of blood. Hawk pulled Emmett into a hug, sudden, fierce, desperate. You matter because of who you are. The brave, selfless kid who ran into fire. The boy who chose to stay and be part of this family. David's blood just makes it official. Emmett clung to him, letting years of grief and loneliness pour out. For his mother, for the father he never knew, for the childhood stolen by cancer and systems that failed. You're my nephew, Hawk said into his hair, my brother's son, and I'm going to make sure you have everything David couldn't give you. Family, home, love, all of it. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were crying. Hawk wiped his eyes roughly. Does this change things? Emmett asked. Yeah, it makes you family by blood and by choice. Double protection. Hawk managed a wet laugh. David would be so proud of you, of the man you're becoming. I barely knew him. You have his heart. That's what matters. Hawk stood. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we tell Delilah. She deserves to know her brother is also her cousin. After Hawk left, Emmett lay in bed feeling lighter. The secret was out. The truth revealed. And nothing had fallen apart. If anything, he felt more secure, more certain of his place. He belonged here, not despite his past, but because of everything that had led him to this moment. For the first time since his mother died, Emmett felt whole. The weeks following the revelation about his connection to David brought subtle changes. The angels treated him differently. Not worse, but with a kind of reverence that made Emmett uncomfortable. They saw David in him now. The resemblance he'd never noticed became all anyone talked about. You have his eyes, Spike said one morning over coffee. Same stubborn set to your jaw when you're thinking, Jax observed during a chess game. David used to draw like that. Raven mentioned watching Emmett sketch in the common room. It was suffocating. Emmett had wanted to belong for himself, but now he was constantly compared to a ghost. A man who died before Emmett could form memories of him. A legend he could never live up to. Delilah noticed his struggle. She found him on the clubhouse roof one evening, a place he'd discovered when he needed space. The sun was setting, painting Riverside in shades of amber and gold. You okay? She asked, settling beside him. Everyone keeps seeing David when they look at me. Yeah, I noticed. Delilah pulled her knees to her chest. Want to know a secret? Always. They did the same thing to me after Mom died. Every time I smiled, someone said I had her smile. Every time I laughed, it was her laugh. Like I wasn't allowed to just be me. Emmett looked at her. How'd you deal with it? I told them to stop. Nicely at first, then not so nicely. She smiled slightly. Eventually they got the message. I'm not Mom. I'm me. I carry pieces of her, but I'm my own person. You think I should tell them? I think you should do whatever makes you comfortable. But yeah, if it's bothering you, say something. The angels are tough, but they listen. Emmett took her advice. At dinner that night with the whole club gathered, he stood up. His legs shook, but he forced himself to speak. I need to say something. The room quieted. All eyes turned to him. I know David was important to all of you. I know he was a brother you loved. And I'm grateful that you see him in me. But I need you to also see Emmett. Not David's son, not David's ghost, just me. His voice steadied. I want to earn my place here as myself, not because of whose blood I carry. The silence that followed felt endless. Then Hawk stood cross to Emmett and gripped his shoulder. You're right. We've been seeing what we lost instead of what we found. He looked around the table. This kid earned his place the moment he ran into fire for my daughter. Everything else is just details. One by one, the angels nodded, acknowledging, accepting. Spike raised his beer. To Emmett, for calling us out on our bullshit. To Emmett, they echoed. The weight lifted. Not completely, but enough. From that night forward, the comparisons lessened. Emmett was allowed to be himself. School continued to present its own challenges. While most students left him alone, a small group saw him as either a hero to worship or a freak to avoid. Emmett was neither. He was just a kid trying to survive 8th grade. His grades were solid. Math came easily, probably inherited from his mother, who'd been an accountant before the cancer. English was harder, but he worked at it. Art class became his sanctuary, a place where he could create without words. The art teacher, Ms. Rothstein, recognized his talent immediately. She started keeping him after class, teaching him techniques beyond the basic curriculum. Perspective, shading, how to capture emotion in a face. You have a gift, she told him one afternoon. Have you thought about art school? I want to do social work, help kids. You can do both. Art therapy is a field, using creativity to help people heal. Ms. Rothstein handed him a brochure. Just think about it. Emmett took the brochure home, showed it to Hawk that evening. Hawk read it carefully. Is this something you want? I don't know, maybe I like art, but I also want to help people like me, kids who've been forgotten. Then do both. There's no rule that says you have to choose one path. Hawk handed back the brochure. You've got time to figure it out. You're only 14. 14. In 2 months, Emmett would be 14. A year ago, he'd been sleeping behind dumpsters, wondering if he'd survive the winter. Now he was planning for college, thinking about careers, living a life he'd never imagined possible. The angels threw him a birthday party. Nothing huge, just family and close friends. Delilah made him a cake that was more frosting than substance, but it was perfect because she'd made it herself. Maggie gave him a leather journal, better quality than his old notebook. For all those thoughts you need to put somewhere, she said with a knowing smile. Spike presented a toolkit for when you start working on bikes seriously. Jax gifted a chess set, so I can keep beating you until you finally learn strategy. Raven gave him a book on motorcycle mechanics. Knowledge is power, kid. And Hawk handed him an envelope. Inside was a certificate, motorcycle safety course registration. You've been riding with us for months. Time to make it official. Hawk's eyes were warm. When you pass, we'll get you your own bike. Emmett's throat tightened. Really? Really? Can't be part of this family and not have your own ride. That spring, Emmett passed his motorcycle safety course on in the first try. The instructor commented on his natural feel for the bike, the way he handled turns and braking like he'd been riding for years. True to his word, Hawk took him to a dealership. Let Emmett choose his own bike. Nothing too powerful, but enough to give him freedom and speed. Emmett chose a Yamaha R3, sleek black, perfect for learning. When he first sat on it, ownership papers in his name, he felt something shift inside. This was his, something that belonged to him that no one could take away. Hawk taught him how to maintain it, how to change oil, check tire pressure, adjust the chain. The mechanical knowledge came easily. Emmett found he liked working with his hands, solving problems, making things function. On weekends, he rode with the Angels. Not on official club business, just recreational rides through the countryside. Those rides became sacred time. No words needed, just the road and the wind and the brotherhood of movement. But the Vipers hadn't forgotten. They were quiet, rebuilding after their failed assault. But intelligence suggested they were planning something bigger, something to end the Angels permanently. Hawk called increasingly frequent chapel meetings. Security rotations tightened, everyone stayed vigilant, waiting for the next move. It came in May, not an attack on the clubhouse or the Angels directly. Instead, the Vipers targeted the legitimate businesses the club protected. 3 establishments in one night. Arson. Coordinated. Professional. No one died, but the message was clear. The Vipers could strike anywhere, anytime. Nothing the Angels valued was safe. The club mobilized. Half went to protect remaining businesses. Half investigated the arsons. Emmett and Delilah were locked down in the clubhouse, confined to the secure areas. "I hate this," Delilah said, pacing the common room. "Sitting here while everyone else fights." "We'd just be in the way," Emmett said, though he felt the same frustration. "We're not helpless. We proved that in the fire." That was different. That was survival. This is war. Delilah stopped pacing, turned to face him. "What if we could help, actually help, not just hide?" "How?" "I've been researching the Vipers, their structure, their businesses, their connections." She pulled out her laptop. "They're running operations from 3 locations. If we could map them, give Dad and the guys actionable intelligence." "Delilah, that's dangerous if they find out you're digging into their business." "They won't. I'm using Tor browsers, VPNs, being careful." Her eyes were determined. "We can't just sit here, Emmett. We have to do something." Against his better judgment, Emmett found himself agreeing. They spent the next week compiling information, business registrations, property records, known associates. Delilah had a mind for patterns, connecting dots that seemed random but formed a picture. By the end of the week, they had a map. 3 primary locations, all connected to shell corporations that traced back to Clayton Reed's old lieutenant, a man called Vincent Cross. They presented their findings to Hawk in his office. He studied the map in silence, then looked at both of them with an expression Emmett couldn't read, pride mixed with concern. "This is good work, really good." Hawk's voice was measured. "But I need you both to understand something. This puts you deeper into this war, makes you not just witnesses, but participants." "We're already participants," Delilah said. "They tried to kill us. Might as well fight back." "Dad, we can help," Emmett added. "We're smart, we're careful, we're not asking to be on the front lines, just let us contribute." Hawk was quiet for a long moment, then he nodded. "Okay, but you work through Raven. All intelligence goes through him first. And if I say pull back, you pull back. No arguments." "Deal," they said in unison. Working with Raven opened Emmett's eyes to a different side of the Angels. The strategic planning, the careful coordination with law enforcement allies, the patience required to build a case. Raven was former military intelligence. He left the service after his 3rd deployment, disillusioned with government bureaucracy, but still possessing skills the Angels needed. He taught Emmett and Delilah how to gather information without leaving traces, how to verify sources, how to think 3 moves ahead. Intelligence work is about patience, Raven explained during one session. You gather small pieces. Most of them mean nothing, but eventually you find the pieces that fit together. That's when you strike. The pieces they were gathering painted a disturbing picture. Vincent Cross wasn't just running the Viper's criminal operations. He was expanding into human trafficking, bringing in women and children from other states. It was bigger and darker than anyone had realized. Hawk brought the information to his FBI contact, Agent Morrison, no relation. The Fed had been building a case against Cross for months, but lacked the inside information needed to move forward. The Angels provided it. In exchange, Agent Morrison agreed to coordinate with the club when the raids went down. Make sure the Angels weren't caught in the crossfire. The joint operation was planned for June 15th. Federal agents would hit all 3 locations simultaneously. The Angels would provide overwatch, making sure no Vipers escaped to threaten families later. Emmett and Delilah weren't allowed anywhere near the actual operation. They watched from the clubhouse, monitoring police scanners and waiting for news. When it came, it was decisive. All 3 locations hit successfully. Vincent Cross arrested, dozens of Vipers taken into custody. The trafficking victims, 17 women and children, rescued and placed into protective services. The Vipers as an organized entity ceased to exist that night. Some members would rebuild, eventually start new chapters. But in Riverside, their power was broken. The war was over. The celebration at the clubhouse that night was subdued. Relief mixed with exhaustion. Too many close calls, too much violence. Everyone was ready for peace. Emmett sat with Hawk on the clubhouse steps, watching the sun rise after the long night. You and Delilah did good work, Hawk said quietly. The intelligence you provided saved lives, made this possible. Feels weird being part of something like this. Yeah, it does. Hawk was quiet for a moment. You know, when David died, I swore I'd never let this life touch my family again. Would keep Delilah away from all of it. Build a wall between the club and everything else. But you couldn't. No, because the club is family. Can't separate them. Hawk looked at Emmett. And you and Delilah proved that family isn't about protection from the world. It's about standing together in it. Do you think David would approve of how things turned out? Hawk smiled. I think David would be amazed. He died trying to protect you and your mother from this life. Now here you are choosing to be part of it, making it better from the inside. I'm not choosing the outlaw part. I want to help people legally. I know, and that's exactly what we need. Someone who can bridge worlds. Hawk stood stretched. Come on, let's get some sleep. Tomorrow we start rebuilding. Rebuilding took months. Not just repairing physical damage from the war, but healing emotional wounds. The Angels lost 2 brothers in the conflict with the Vipers. Their memorial service filled the clubhouse with grief and remembrance. Emmett sketched portraits of the fallen, not formal or idealized, but honest, capturing who they'd been in life. The drawings were framed and hung in the chapel, permanent tributes. Through it all, life continued. School ended for the summer. Emmett passed 8th grade with honors. Delilah moved up to high school, already making plans for her future. That summer, Emmett and Hawk took a trip. Just the 2 of them. Hawk's idea. There's something I want you to see, was all he'd said. They rode their bikes across 3 states, camping at night, talking around fires. Hawk told stories about David. Real ones, not sanitized legends. The mistakes he'd made, the people he'd hurt, the redemption he'd sought. He wasn't perfect, Hawk said one night in Colorado, stars bright overhead. Made a lot of bad choices. Leaving your mom was one of them. But he tried to make up for it, tried to be better. Do you think he succeeded? He died protecting the woman he loved and the son he never got to raise. Yeah, I think in the end he succeeded. Their destination was a small town in Wyoming, a cemetery on a hill overlooking mountains. Hawk led Emmett to a simple headstone. David Andrew Webb, brother, friend, protector, gone but not forgotten. Emmett stood there looking at his father's grave for the first time. He'd never known where David was buried, never had a place to mourn. I come here once a year, Hawk said quietly. Tell him about Delilah, about the club, about life. Emmett knelt, touched the stone. Hi, Dad, he whispered. I'm Emmett, your son. I wish I'd known you. But I know Hawk, and he's told me who you were, the good and the bad. I want you to know I'm okay. Mom did a good job, and now Hawk's doing a good job. We're family, all of us. He stood, wiped his eyes. Hawk's arm came around his shoulders. He'd be so proud of you, Hawk said. They stayed for an hour, then rode back into the sunset, leaving flowers on David's grave. That trip changed something in Emmett, gave him closure he hadn't known he needed. When they returned to Riverside, he felt lighter, more certain of who he was and where he belonged. Ninth grade started with Emmett more confident. He joined the art club officially, started tutoring younger kids who struggled with math, became someone other students came to for help, not because he was associated with the Angels, but because he was kind and patient. Delilah thrived in high school, made the debate team, aced her classes, started talking seriously about law school. She wanted to change the system from inside the way Emmett wanted to help kids who'd slipped through the cracks. We're going to change the world, she told him one afternoon, both of them doing homework in the clubhouse library. That's ambitious. So you ran into a burning building when you were 13. Ambition runs in the family. Emmett laughed. She was right. They were both their parents' children. David's courage, Sarah's compassion, Elizabeth's intelligence, Hawk's determination. A combination that could move mountains. As winter approached again, Emmett marked a milestone. 1 full year since the fire. 1 year since his life changed completely. The school held a memorial service. Emmett was asked to speak. He almost refused, uncomfortable with public attention. But Delilah convinced him. People need to hear it, need to know that one person can make a difference. So Emmett stood before an assembly of students and teachers and parents and told his story. Not all of it, not the homelessness or the foster care nightmare, just the moment that mattered. I saw someone who needed help, and I didn't think about whether I could. I just acted. We all have that choice every day, to see someone in trouble and either walk past or step in. He paused. I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who chose to step in. And that choice changed my life. Gave me a family I never expected. Taught me that courage isn't about being fearless. It's about being scared and doing the right thing anyway. The applause was thunderous, but what mattered more were the conversations afterward. Kids coming up to him, sharing their own stories of helping or being helped. Teachers thanking him for reminding them why they'd chosen education. One mother approached with her son, maybe 10 years old. You saved my nephew that day. He was in Mrs. Patterson's classroom. You gave our family a miracle. Emmett hadn't known there were others in the classroom, had only seen Delilah, but of course there had been. Other kids arriving early, other lives at risk. I'm glad he's okay, Emmett managed. That night, lying in bed at the clubhouse, Emmett pulled out the journal Maggie had given him, wrote the only words that made sense. Mom, a year ago, I saved Delilah. Today I found out I saved others too. Kids I never saw. Lives I didn't know I'd touched. You always said one act of kindness ripples outward. I'm starting to understand what you meant. I'm not invisible anymore. I'm seen, I'm valued, I'm home, and I'm finally truly okay. The journal entry felt like closing a chapter. The lost boy was gone. In his place was someone stronger, someone who'd survived and thrived, someone ready for whatever came next. Emmett Webb Morrison was home. But even as one chapter closed, another was beginning. The next morning, Hawk gathered Emmett and Delilah in his private quarters. The room was sparse but personal. Photos of Elizabeth, Delilah's mother, covered one wall. A shelf held mementos from years of brotherhood. This was Hawk's sanctuary, and bringing them here meant something. Delilah sensed it immediately. "Dad, what's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong." Hawk gestured for them to sit. "But there's something you both need to know." He told her everything about David, about Sarah, about Emmett being David's son, Hawk's nephew by blood. Delilah listened with widening eyes, processing the information. When Hawk finished, she turned to Emmett. "You're my cousin." "Yeah, I guess I am." A smile broke across her face, brilliant and unexpected. "That's amazing. I always wanted more family. Now I have a brother and a cousin." She hugged him suddenly. "This is the best news ever." Emmett laughed, the sound surprised but genuine. Leave it to Delilah to find joy in complexity. But Hawk's expression remained serious. "There's more. The Vipers may be gone, but Clayton Reed is still a threat. He's been planning something from prison, using contacts on the outside." "What kind of something?" Emmett asked. "Don't know yet, but intel suggests it's big, personal. He wants revenge for what happened." Over the following weeks, the Angels became vigilant again. Security tightened. Everyone stayed alert. But months passed without incident. Maybe Clayton's threats were empty. Maybe prison had neutered his reach. Then 3 weeks later, Emmett was in the clubhouse library when the explosion shook the building. He dropped his textbook, ears ringing from the blast. Smoke poured through the vents. Fire alarms screamed. He ran for the hallway and saw chaos. The front entrance had been breached. Not destroyed, but damaged enough that the reinforced door hung open. Through the smoke came figures. 6 men, armed, moving with military precision. This wasn't Vipers. This was something else, something worse. The 2 Angels on security duty engaged immediately. Gunfire erupted. Emmett pressed against the wall, heart hammering. He needed to hide. Needed to get to the safe room in the basement. But between him and the basement stairs were the intruders. He backtracked, heading for the rear exit. More footsteps behind him. They were everywhere. How many had they sent? Emmett ducked into the storage room, the one full of bike parts and tools. Closed the door quietly. Looked for a weapon. Anything. His hands closed on a heavy wrench. Not much, but better than nothing. The door burst open. One of the men stood there, gun raised. "Found the kid!" Emmett didn't think. He swung the wrench. Connected with the man's wrist. The gun clattered to the floor. The man cursed, lunged for Emmett. They crashed into a shelf. Parts scattered. Emmett scrambled for the gun, but the man was faster, stronger. A hand closed on Emmett's collar, yanking him back. "Clayton wants you alive. Wants you to watch what we do to this place." Terror spiked through Emmett. He kicked backward, connected with the man's knee. The grip loosened. Emmett twisted free, ran. The hallway was a war zone. 1 Angel down, bleeding but alive. The other had taken cover behind the bar, trading fire with 3 attackers. Emmett bolted for the basement stairs. Made it halfway down before someone grabbed him from behind. Strong arms, professional grip. Emmett was lifted off his feet, carried back up the stairs and out through the damaged entrance. Outside, a van waited. The side door slid open. Emmett was thrown inside, hitting the metal floor hard. The door slammed. The van accelerated. Emmett rolled onto his back, gasping. 2 men sat on the benches watching him. One was the man from the storage room, cradling his injured wrist. The other was older, maybe 50, with cold eyes and a predator's smile. "Emmett Webb," the older man said. "I'm Clayton Reed. We have a lot to discuss." Emmett's mind raced. The phone. Did he still have the phone Jax gave him? He shifted slightly, felt it in his pocket. If he could activate the GPS without them noticing. "Where are you taking me?" "Somewhere your angel friends can't find you." Clayton leaned forward. You cost me a lot when you pulled that girl from the fire. Made me look weak. Made my people question whether I can finish what I start. So you're going to kill me to prove a point. Eventually, but first you're going to make a call. Tell Hawk Morrison that if he wants to see you alive, he needs to meet me. Alone, unarmed. And when he does, I'll kill him too. Two problems solved. Emmett's blood went cold. This wasn't just about him. Clayton was using him as bait to draw out Hawk, to finish the revenge he'd waited years for. He won't come, Emmett lied. Clayton smiled. He will, because you matter to him. You're his nephew, his brother's son. You think I don't have intelligence? I know everything about Hawk's operation, including the fact that you're family. The van drove for 20 minutes before stopping. When the door opened, Emmett saw a warehouse, abandoned, isolated, perfect for what Clayton had planned. They dragged him inside. The space was vast and empty except for a chair in the center and a camera on a tripod pointed at it. Sit, Clayton ordered. Emmett sat. His hands were zip-tied behind the chair. The phone was still in his pocket, but he couldn't reach it now. Clayton positioned himself behind the camera. Now we're going to record a message for Hawk. You're going to tell him exactly what I say. If you deviate, if you try to warn him, I'll shoot you in the knee and we'll record it again. Understand? Emmett nodded. Good. Clayton hit record. Start with his name. Hawk, Emmett said, voice steadier than he felt. Tell him where you are. But Emmett didn't know where he was. And that's when he understood. The phone in his pocket. The GPS. Even if he couldn't warn Hawk verbally, the angels would be able to track the signal. Unless Clayton's people were jamming it or planning to move him again. Emmett made a choice, a calculated risk. I'm in a warehouse, he said slowly, then added details Clayton hadn't told him to include. Old brick building, near railroad tracks. I can hear trains. There's graffiti on the walls. Says Riverside Rail 1952. Clayton's eyes narrowed. I didn't tell you to describe the location. You said tell him where I am. The backhand came fast. Emmett's head snapped to the side, pain exploding across his cheek. His vision swam. Try that again and I'll make this much worse, Clayton growled. They recorded the message properly, this time. Emmett reading Clayton's script, demanding Hawk come alone, setting the terms of surrender. When it was done, Clayton sent the video using Emmett's phone. Within minutes, a response came, a text from Hawk. I'll come, don't hurt him. Clayton smiled. See, I told you he'd take the bait. But Emmett had seen something else in that brief glimpse of the phone screen. A small icon. Active tracking. The GPS was working. The angels knew where he was. Now he just had to stay alive until they arrived. Hours passed. Clayton left Emmett tied to the chair while he and his men prepared. They set up ambush positions, positioned shooters in the rafters, created a kill box designed to end Hawk the moment he walked through the door. Emmett watched it all, mind working. He'd given them the location details. The angels would be coming, but they'd be walking into a trap, unless he could do something to level the playing field. The zip ties were tight, cutting into his wrists, but they were plastic, not metal. Plastic could break with enough force in the right angle. Emmett had learned that trick months ago from a YouTube video, back when he was paranoid about being restrained. He'd practiced with twist ties, figuring out the physics. He worked the ties, slowly shifting his wrists to create tension. The plastic dug into his skin, drawing blood. But gradually, millimeter by millimeter, he felt them starting to give. Can I use the bathroom? He asked, buying time. Clayton laughed. You can piss yourself for all I care. Come on, I've been sitting here for hours. One of the men, Derek, sighed. Boss kid's right. If he pisses all over the chair, it'll smell like hell in here. Clayton waved dismissively. Fine, take him. Watch him close. Derek cut the zip ties and hauled Emmett to his feet. Emmett's hands were numb from lack of circulation. He flexed his fingers as Derek pushed him toward a door at the back of the warehouse. The bathroom was disgusting, broken sink, filthy toilet graffiti covering every surface, but it had a small window high on the wall. "Make it fast," Derek said, standing in the doorway, eyes on his phone. Emmett went to the toilet, playing for time. While pretending to use it, he scanned the room. The window was painted shut, probably hadn't been opened in years, but the glass was thin, breakable. When he finished, he moved to the sink as if to wash his hands. Derek was still distracted by whatever was on his phone. Emmett grabbed the broken porcelain tank lid sitting on the floor. Heavy, solid. He swung it at Derek's head with everything he had. The impact was sickening. Derek went down hard unconscious before he hit the floor. Emmett grabbed the gun from Derek's belt, hands shaking so badly he nearly dropped it. He'd never held a real gun before, had no idea how to use it properly. But the safety was off and his finger found the trigger. No time to climb to the window. They'd hear him breaking glass. He had to run. Emmett cracked the bathroom door, peered out. The warehouse floor was visible. 3 men positioned in the rafters. Clayton pacing near the entrance. 2 more outside near vehicles. At least 6 total. Emmett had a gun he barely knew how to use, and the element of surprise. That was it. He needed to create a diversion, something to bring help faster. His eyes fell on barrels near the warehouse wall. Chemical smell, accelerant, the same kind used in the school fire. An idea formed. Terrible, dangerous, exactly what Clayton wouldn't expect. Emmett moved quietly to the barrels, found one that was leaking. He tipped it carefully, letting the liquid spread across the floor toward the entrance. Then he grabbed a rusty lighter from Derek's pocket. This was insane, but if it drew attention, if it forced Clayton's people to react, if it gave the angels the opening they needed. He flicked the lighter, dropped it into the accelerant trail. Fire bloomed instantly, racing along the chemical path toward the entrance. The men in the rafters shouted. Clayton spun, saw the flames. "What the hell?" Emmett ran, not toward the exit, but deeper into the warehouse, looking for another way out. The fire spread faster than he'd expected, catching on old wood and debris. Smoke filled the space. Gunfire erupted, not at him. Outside, the angels had arrived. Emmett heard motorcycle engines, shouting, more gunfire. The ambush Clayton had prepared was worthless now, positions compromised by the fire and chaos. He found a loading dock door half open, squeezed through into the daylight. The scene outside was war. Angels and Clayton's mercenaries engaged in a firefight. Hawk was there coordinating his brothers returning fire. He saw Emmett and his expression transformed. "Emmett, get down." Emmett dropped as a bullet whizzed past, scrambled behind a pile of crates. The gun felt heavy and wrong in his hands. He didn't want to use it, didn't want to be part of this violence. But Clayton emerged from the warehouse, weapon raised, aimed directly at Hawk. Emmett didn't think, just moved, raised the gun, pulled the trigger. The recoil shocked him. The noise was deafening. His shot went wide, missing Clayton but hitting the wall beside him, close enough to make Clayton flinch, to turn his attention. Clayton's eyes locked on Emmett. Recognition, rage. Hawk's shot was precise, professional. Clayton went down, weapon clattering from his hand, not dead, shot in the shoulder but neutralized. The remaining mercenaries, seeing their employer fall, broke. Some ran, others threw down their weapons. The fight ended as quickly as it had started. Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had called the police. The angels had anticipated this, had their story ready. Self-defense, rescue operation, all technically true. Hawk crossed to Emmett in 3 long strides. "You hurt, did they?" "I'm okay. I'm okay." Emmett's hands wouldn't stop shaking. The gun fell from his fingers. "I started the fire, had to do something." Hawk pulled him into a crushing hug. "You did good, so good." Jesus, kid, you scared me. The police arrived, ambulances, fire trucks for the burning warehouse. The scene became controlled chaos. Angels gave statements, evidence was collected. Clayton and his surviving mercenaries were arrested. Emmett sat in the back of an ambulance wrapped in a blanket while a paramedic checked him for injuries. Minor bruising from the fight, a split lip from Clayton's backhand, zip tie marks on his wrists, but alive, whole. Delilah appeared escorted by Spike. She saw Emmett and ran, threw her arms around him crying. I thought they killed you. When Dad got the message, I thought. I'm okay, Emmett said into her hair. I'm okay. Over her shoulder, he saw Hawk talking to a man in a suit. FBI based on the badge, handing over evidence, files and recordings. Whatever deal had been struck, it looked like it would hold. Hours later, back at the clubhouse, the Angels gathered. The damage from the initial breach was being repaired. Security was being upgraded, but the threat was over. Clayton was in federal custody facing charges that would put him away for life. Hawk called a meeting in the chapel. This time he brought Emmett and Delilah inside. The sacred space was simple: a long table, chairs, photos of fallen brothers on the walls. This was where decisions were made, where brotherhood was forged. Brothers, Hawk said, addressing the assembled angels. Today could have ended in tragedy. Instead, it ended with a 14-year-old kid being braver than most men twice his age. Eyes turned to Emmett. He wanted to shrink under the attention, but Delilah's hand found his, grounding him. Emmett started the fire that saved his own life and brought us running. He fought back when anyone else would have frozen. He's got his father's courage and his mother's heart. Hawk's voice was thick with emotion. And I want to formally recognize him as family, not just by blood, but by choice. The Angels stood as one. No vote needed, no debate, just silent acknowledgement. Welcome to the family, Emmett Webb Morrison, Hawk said. Morrison, the family name. Emmett felt tears burn his eyes. That night, the clubhouse held a proper celebration. Not for victory, though they had won, but for family, for survival, for the bonds that held them together. Emmett sat with Delilah, watching the Angels laugh and tell stories. These men who'd taken him in, who'd protected him, who'd become his family. You know what's weird, Delilah said quietly. What? 2 years ago, I thought my life was over. Mom was gone. Dad was sad all the time. I felt alone, even when I wasn't. She looked at him. Then you showed up, and suddenly I had a brother, a real family again. I was thinking the same thing, about my life being over. Emmett smiled. Guess we saved each other. Yeah, I guess we did. The years that followed brought change. Clayton Reed was tried and convicted, sentenced to life without parole. His organization collapsed. The threat was truly over. Emmett continued school, excelling in both academics and art. Ms. Rothstein became a mentor, helping him develop his talent while keeping sight of his goal to help others. Delilah thrived, moving through high school with determination and grace. She applied to Princeton for pre-law, got accepted with a full scholarship. When Emmett was 16, Hawk took him to get his motorcycle license. He passed on the first try. That evening, Hawk presented him with keys to a Yamaha R3. Sleek, black, perfect. His own bike. You've earned it, Hawk said simply. They rode together that night, father and son, through riverside streets under impossible stars. Emmett had never felt more free, more himself, more home. High school graduation came when Emmett was 18. He'd been accepted to Columbia University for social work, full scholarship. The Angels celebrated like he'd won the lottery. Because in a way he had. He'd won a future he never thought possible. The night before leaving for New York, Hawk gave him something, a small box worn with age. Inside was a ring, silver simple with an angel's wing etched into the band. This was David's, Hawk said. He wore it every day. I kept it after he died, didn't know who to give it to. He looked at Emmett. Now I do. Your father would be so proud of who you've become. Emmett slipped the ring on. It fit perfectly. Thank you, he managed, for everything, for seeing me, for choosing me. You chose us right back. That's what makes it family. Columbia was challenging in ways Emmett hadn't anticipated. The city was overwhelming, millions of people moving past each other without seeing. The academic rigor was intense. He'd gone from being one of the smartest kids in Riverside to average among brilliant peers who'd attended elite prep schools and had parents who were doctors, lawyers, professors. But Emmett had survived homelessness. He'd survived the Vipers. He could survive college. His freshman year was brutal, adjusting to dorm life after years of privacy at the clubhouse, navigating relationships with classmates who'd never known hardship, professors who expected mastery of concepts Emmett was learning for the first time. He called Hawk weekly, sometimes just to hear his voice, to remember he had a home to return to. "How you holding up?" Hawk asked during one particularly rough week. "I'm struggling. Everyone here is so smart, so prepared. You're smart too, and you're prepared in ways they're not. You know why the work matters. They're still figuring that out." It helped. Slowly, Emmett found his footing. He joined study groups, made friends with other scholarship students who understood the pressure of carrying their family's hopes. He discovered that his practical understanding of trauma and systems failures gave him insights his classmates lacked. By sophomore year, Emmett was thriving. His professors recognized his unique perspective. They encouraged him to combine academic theory with real-world application. That's when he started Street Reach. The idea came from walking home late one night and seeing a girl maybe 16 sleeping in a subway entrance. She reminded him of himself, invisible, forgotten, surviving. Emmett couldn't walk past. He bought her food from a bodega, sat with her while she ate, didn't ask questions, just presence. "Why are you helping me?" she asked finally. "Because someone helped me once, when I needed it most." Her name was Jasmine, 16, pregnant, aged out of foster care at 18 but kicked out early when her foster parents discovered the pregnancy. Boyfriend disappeared the moment he heard. No family, no support, just the streets. "There are shelters," Emmett said. "Shelters aren't safe when you're pregnant. Other residents steal your stuff. Staff don't care. I'd rather take my chances out here." The system was failing her, just like it had failed Emmett. He told his social work professor about Jasmine the next day. Professor Martinez listened, then nodded slowly. "There's a gap in services for pregnant homeless youth. Shelters aren't equipped. Group homes won't take them. They fall through every crack." She paused. "What if you tried to fill that gap?" "How?" "Start small. Mobile outreach. Van service providing food supplies, connection to services. No requirements, no judgment, just showing up." The idea resonated. Emmett recruited 3 other students. They pooled money, rented a van, planned routes through areas where homeless youth congregated. Street Reach launched on a Friday night in November. Cold, threatening snow. They drove through Manhattan, stopping at known gathering spots, offered sandwiches, blankets, phone charging. But mostly they offered to listen. That first night, they served 8 kids. Jasmine was one of them. By the end of the semester, Street Reach was operating 3 nights a week. They'd connected with 47 homeless youth, helped 12 get into housing, got 5 enrolled in GEAD programs. Emmett wrote grant proposals between classes, applied for funding from foundations focused on youth homelessness. His personal story made compelling reading. Former homeless teen creates outreach program. It resonated. They won a $20,000 grant, enough to expand operations, hire part-time staff, buy supplies. Street Reach became official, incorporated as a nonprofit. Emmett as founder and director. Jasmine stayed connected throughout her pregnancy. Street Reach helped her get into a maternity home that provided support for young mothers. Safe, clean, staff who cared. In March of Emmett's junior year, Jasmine gave birth to a healthy baby girl. 8 pounds, 3 ounces. Perfect. Emmett visited her in the hospital, brought flowers and a stuffed bear for the baby. "I'm naming her Hope," Jasmine said, cradling her daughter, "because that's what you gave me when I had none." Emmett's throat tightened. "You gave that to yourself. You chose to accept help, to fight for a better life. That was all you." "No, it was you showing up, seeing me when everyone else walked past." Jasmine looked at him with clear eyes. "I was ready to give up. Then you sat down with me in that subway, treated me like a person. That changed everything." Stories like Jasmine's fueled Emmett, but they also highlighted the magnitude of the problem. For every kid, Street Reach helped dozens more slip through cracks. The system wasn't broken, it was designed this way. Designed to let vulnerable kids disappear. He couldn't fix it alone, but he could document what was working, what needed to change. His senior thesis became a comprehensive analysis of youth homelessness interventions. He studied programs across the country, interviewed policymakers, social workers, and most importantly, the kids themselves. His conclusion was clear. The system failed because it treated symptoms instead of causes, gave temporary shelter but not stability, offered services but not relationship, focused on compliance instead of healing. What was needed was radical reimagining, housing first, healthcare integrated, education accessible, job training relevant, mental health support consistent, and all of it delivered through relationship, through people who showed up, who stayed, who cared. The thesis was 200 pages of research analysis and recommendations. His advisor called it the best undergraduate work she'd seen in 20 years. It won the university's award for outstanding senior thesis. Grad schools noticed. Harvard, Yale, Stanford all offered full rides for their PhD programs, prestigious positions, guaranteed careers in academia. But Emmett didn't want to spend more years theorizing. He wanted to build, to prove the model worked, to create the program he'd needed when he was 13 and invisible. He turned down every offer. Delilah, visiting for his graduation, understood immediately. "You're going back to Riverside." "Yeah, I need to build this, not just write about it." "What does Hawk say?" "He says the clubhouse will always have space for me, that the angels will support however they can." Emmett smiled. He's proud. I can hear it in his voice, even when he's trying to be casual. Graduation day was surreal. Emmett walked across the stage in cap and gown, shook the dean's hand, received his diploma. Summa cum laude, social work major with honors. In the audience, Hawk and Delilah cheered louder than anyone. The angels had come too. Spike, Jax, Raven, Maggie, all of them in nice clothes, looking almost respectable. Their family, celebrating their kid. After the ceremony, Hawk pulled Emmett aside. "Your mother would be so proud. Sarah would have burst watching you graduate from Columbia." "I wish she could have seen it." "She did. I believe that." Hawk gripped Emmett's shoulder. "And David, too. Your father would have bragged to everyone about his Columbia graduate son." That night, they celebrated at a restaurant in Manhattan. The angels slightly out of place, but not caring. This was family. Family showed up. Spike raised his glass. To Emmett, who went from sleeping behind dumpsters to graduating top of his class. Proof that where you start doesn't determine where you finish. To Emmett, they echoed. 2 weeks later, Emmett moved back to Riverside. His old room at the clubhouse was exactly as he'd left it. Hawk had maintained it like a shrine. Fresh sheets on the bed, his art supplies organized on the desk. Home. But Emmett didn't plan to stay long. He had work to do. The Angels owned a building downtown, former warehouse sitting empty for 5 years, too big for club use, too run down for commercial rent, perfect for Emmett's vision. They donated it, free and clear, title transfer, no strings attached. This is your inheritance from David, the Hawk said during the signing. He would have wanted his son to use it for something meaningful. Emmett stood in the empty warehouse listening to echoes. 20,000 square feet of possibility. Concrete floors, high ceilings, good bones. With work, it could become everything he had envisioned. He spent weeks creating detailed plans. First floor would be intake and services, medical clinic, counseling offices, classroom space, computer lab. Second floor dormitories, individual rooms, not bunks, privacy, dignity, basement for storage and mechanical systems, courtyard for outdoor space. Cost estimate came back at $250,000. Renovation, equipment, initial operating expenses. Emmett had $12,000 in savings from street reach stipends and graduation gifts. He needed $238,000 more. He wrote grants, dozens of them, applied to every foundation focused on youth services, leveraged his Columbia connections, used his personal story. Former homeless teen creates comprehensive support center. Response was overwhelming. Foundations loved the narrative. Young person who'd experienced homelessness designing solutions based on lived experience. They funded enthusiastically. Within 3 months, Emmett had secured $300,000 in grants, more than needed, enough to build out the space and fund first-year operations. Construction began in September. Emmett worked alongside contractors learning plumbing and electrical and carpentry. The Angels helped. Spike handled all mechanical work. Jax managed security systems. Raven coordinated suppliers. It was family project, everyone contributing, building something that mattered. 6 months later, the transformation was complete. The warehouse had become a haven, professional but warm, institutional efficiency with human touch, everything Emmett had imagined. They named it Second Chances. Delilah's suggestion, simple, honest, true. Grand opening was scheduled for October 16th, 5 years to the day since the fire, 5 years since Emmett's life changed. Media covered it. Local news ran features. Former homeless teen opens youth center. Human interest gold. Emmett did interviews, uncomfortable with attention, but understanding its value. Visibility meant funding. Funding meant helping more kids. The first resident arrived on opening day. Tyler, 14 years old, homeless for 6 months, sleeping in the exact spot where Emmett had once hidden behind Franklin Middle School. Emmett found him during a morning walk. Couldn't pass by. Sat down on the cold ground. "I'm Emmett. You need somewhere warm." Tyler eyed him suspiciously. "Who are you?" "Someone who used to sleep right here." 7 months. I know how hard it is. "I'm fine." I said that too. Every day. Lying to myself because admitting the truth hurt too much. Emmett stood, offered his hand. "I've got a place. Safe. Warm. No strings. Just a chance to catch your breath." Tyler stared at the hand, at Emmett, deciding whether to trust. Finally, he took it. Second Chances was everything Emmett had promised. Tyler got his own room, clean bed, lockable door, privacy for the first time in months. He got 3 meals a day, access to showers, clean clothes, medical attention for the persistent cough he'd been ignoring. But more than that, he got relationships, staff who cared, who checked on him, who noticed when he struggled, who celebrated small victories. Within a week, Tyler enrolled in school. Within a month, he started therapy to process the trauma that led to homelessness. Within 3 months, he was thriving, grades improving, making friends, planning for a future. Others followed. Marcus, 13, escaping abusive foster home. Sarah, 15, kicked out for being gay. James, 16, aged out of system with nowhere to go. Each with their story, each needing what second chances offered. Safety, support, second chance. By the end of year one, second chances had served 23 kids. 18 remained in residence. 5 had transitioned to independent living with ongoing support. The model worked. Year 2 brought expansion. More kids, more staff, partnerships with schools and healthcare providers, a job training program teaching marketable skills, GED classes for those who dropped out. Media attention increased. Emmett's TED Talk, The Gift of Being Seen, went viral. 3 million views in the first month. Invitations to speak at conferences. Interviews with national outlets. Through it all, Emmett stayed grounded, lived simply, directed salary back into the program, continued hands-on work with residents. He never wanted to become the kind of director who forgot what the kids were experiencing, because he remembered, would always remember, the cold, the hunger, the invisibility, the desperate hope that someone would see him and care. Second chances was his promise, that no kid would stay invisible if he could help it. Emmett hired staff who understood. Many were former system kids themselves. They brought empathy born from experience, knew the difference between help that empowered and help that demeaned. One staff member, Devin, had been a resident, came to second chances at 17, angry and defensive, tested every boundary, pushed everyone away. Emmett didn't give up, showed up every day, consistent, patient, present. Slowly, Devin began to trust, to heal, to imagine a future beyond survival. He graduated high school, enrolled in community college, studied social work. When he finished his degree, Emmett offered him a job. "You sure?" Devin asked. "I was a nightmare when I first got here. You were hurting, you're healed now, and you understand these kids better than anyone." Emmett smiled. "Plus, you'll call me out if I ever start losing touch with the work. I need that." Devin became one of Second Chance's best counselors. The kids responded to his honesty, his refusal to sugarcoat, his proof that healing was possible. Stories like Devin's justified everything: the long hours, the emotional toll, the constant fundraising. Because the work mattered, lives were changing, futures were being rewritten. At 25, Emmett gave his first TED Talk. The Gift of Being Seen went viral, millions of views, media appearances, but Emmett stayed grounded. He still volunteered at the homeless shelter, still rode motorcycles with the Angels, still had Sunday dinner with Hawk and Delilah. At 28, Emmett met Claire during a particularly hectic week at Second Chances. The medical clinic had been without a doctor for 2 months. Their previous physician had relocated for family reasons. Finding replacement was proving difficult. Most doctors weren't interested in part-time work at a nonprofit serving homeless youth. Then Claire Rodriguez walked through the door. She was 30, board certified in family medicine, with specific training in adolescent health and trauma. She'd heard about Second Chances from a colleague, wanted to volunteer 1 day a week. Why, Emmett asked during the interview. He'd learned to question motives. Some volunteers wanted feel-good stories for social media. Others lasted one difficult shift before disappearing. Claire met his skepticism with directness. "I grew up in foster care, group homes in the Bronx, aged out at 18 with a high school diploma and $200. No family, no support, no idea how to navigate the world." Emmett's attention sharpened. "How'd you become a doctor?" Scholarship to SUNY, worked 3 years, slept 4 hours a night, failed organic chemistry twice before passing. She smiled slightly. It wasn't pretty, but a social worker named Mrs. Chen saw something in me, helped me apply to college, wrote recommendation letters, showed up at my graduation. She changed my life by believing I was worth the effort. So you want to pay it forward? I want to be for these kids what Mrs. Chen was for me. Someone who shows up, who stays, who proves they matter. Claire's expression was serious. I know what it's like to feel invisible, to believe the world would be better without you. If I can help even one kid feel seen, it's worth it. Emmett hired her on the spot. Claire started the following week. She treated patients with a combination of clinical expertise and genuine compassion, diagnosed conditions previous doctors had missed, connected kids to specialists. But more than that, she listened, really listened, treated each resident as a whole person, not a collection of symptoms. The kids loved her, trusted her in ways they didn't trust other adults. Emmett found himself watching her work, admiring her competence, her patience, the way she could calm a panicking teenager with just her presence. He told himself it was professional appreciation, nothing more. But 3 months in, during a particularly long Friday, Claire stayed late to finish paperwork. Emmett was in his office reviewing grant applications. Around 8, Claire knocked. You got a minute? Yeah, what's up? She sat across from him, looked tired but content. I wanted to thank you for giving me this opportunity. Working here, it's reminded me why I became a doctor. You're incredible at it. The kids respond to you in ways they don't with anyone else. Because I get it. I've been where they are. Claire paused. Can I ask you something personal? Emmett tensed but nodded. You never talk about your own story, about how you ended up creating second chances. The staff know bits and pieces, but you keep the details private. It's not about me, it's about the kids. But it is about you. Your experience informs everything here. The way the space is designed, the rules we have and don't have, the emphasis on relationship over compliance. Claire leaned forward. I see you, Emmett, the way you connect with these kids, the way you know exactly what they need because you needed it once. Something in her tone made Emmett look up. Meet her eyes, see recognition there. Understanding that went beyond professional respect. I was homeless, he said quietly. 13 years old, 7 months on the streets, sleeping behind a school, invisible. Claire didn't react with shock or pity, just nodded. What changed? I saved someone, ran into a burning building without thinking, pulled out a girl who would have died. Emmett found himself telling the whole story. The fire, Hawk, the angels, Delilah. The journey from invisible to valued, from alone to family. Claire listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Thank you for trusting me with that, she said finally. I know it's not easy to share. Why do I feel like I can tell you anything? Because we speak the same language, the language of people who've survived what shouldn't be survivable, who understand that asking for help isn't weakness. It's the bravest thing you can do. That conversation shifted something between them. Professional boundaries remained, but underneath was recognition, connection, the beginning of something neither of them was ready to name. They started having coffee after Claire's shifts, talking about cases, about the kids, about the challenges of running a nonprofit with limited resources. But the conversations drifted into personal territory, childhoods, dreams, fears. Emmett learned that Claire had been in 7 foster homes before aging out, that she'd been homeless for 3 months after turning 18, that medical school had been her escape route, her proof that she was more than her circumstances. Claire learned about Emmett's mother, about David, about the angels and the complicated family he had found, about the weight of survivor's guilt, of knowing he'd gotten lucky while so many others hadn't. 6 months after Claire started volunteering, Emmett asked her to dinner. Not work-related, just them. She said yes. Their first date was at a small Italian restaurant in Riverside's old quarter. They talked for 4 hours, laughed, shared stories they'd never told anyone else, found comfort in the easy conversation that came from truly understanding each other's experiences. When Emmett walked Claire to her car, she kissed him, brief but meaningful, a promise of something worth exploring. "Is this a good idea?" she asked afterward. "We work together." "Probably not, but I don't care." Emmett smiled. "I want to know you, really know you, not as a colleague, as Claire. I want that too." They dated carefully at first, keeping professional and personal separate, not advertising the relationship to staff or residents, but gradually as it became serious, they were more open. Emmett brought Claire to Sunday dinner at the clubhouse. Introducing her to Hawk and Delilah felt significant, like bringing her into his real family. Hawk liked her immediately, appreciated her directness, her refusal to be intimidated by a room full of bikers, her obvious care for Emmett. "She's good for you," Hawk told Emmett later. "Keeps you grounded, doesn't let you disappear into the work." Delilah adored her. "Finally, I thought you'd be single forever, too focused on saving everyone else to let someone save you." "Claire's not saving me." "No, she's partnering with you. That's better." A year into their relationship, Claire moved in with Emmett. He'd bought a small house near Second Chances. 2 bedrooms, modest yard, close enough to walk to work. It was the first time Emmett had lived with someone since his mother died. The intimacy was both wonderful and terrifying. Letting someone see him at his worst, his nightmares, his bad days, the moments when the weight of the work crushed him. Claire met him in those moments with unwavering support. She understood darkness, didn't try to fix him, just stood beside him until the storms passed. When Emmett proposed, it was unplanned. They were sitting on their porch watching a thunderstorm roll through. Claire was reading a medical journal. Emmett was sketching. Peaceful. Perfect. "Marry me," Emmett said suddenly. Claire looked up. "What?" "Marry me. Let's build a life together. Official, permanent, family." She set down the journal, studied his face. "You're serious?" "Completely. I love you. I want to wake up next to you for the rest of my life. I want to build something that's ours. I want—" Claire kissed him. "Yes, yes, I'll marry you." They married at the clubhouse. Small ceremony, just family and close friends. Angels in their dress cuts, Second Chances staff, a few of the residents who'd been with the program long enough to feel like extended family. Hawk officiated. He'd gotten ordained online specifically for this. "We're gathered here to celebrate love that's been forged through fire," Hawk began. "Emmett and Claire have both survived what would break most people. They've taken that pain and transformed it into purpose, into healing, into hope. Now they're choosing to walk forward together, to build a family rooted in choice and love and the courage to keep showing up." When Emmett said his vows, his voice broke. "Claire, you see me, all of me, the broken parts and the healing parts, and you love me anyway. You make me believe I deserve happiness, that I can build a life beyond survival. I promise to see you just as clearly, to love you through everything, to choose you every day for the rest of my life." Claire's vows were equally raw. "Emmett, you showed me that our pasts don't define our futures, that we can take pain and create beauty. I promise to be your partner, your equal, your safe place. I promise to build a home with you where love is louder than fear, where we create the family we deserved but never had." They exchanged rings. Hawk declared them married. The clubhouse erupted in cheers. At the reception, Spike gave a toast that had everyone laughing and crying. Emmett came to us a scared kid, skinny as a rail, wouldn't say boo to a ghost. We watched him grow into a man who runs into fires, who saves lives, who built something from nothing. Claire, you're getting a good one, but you already knew that. Delilah followed. Emmett's my brother, my family. The person who proved that courage comes in unexpected packages. Claire, welcome to the chaos. We're so glad you're here. Emmett and Claire bought a bigger house, 3 bedrooms, one for them, one for an office, one waiting for possibility. That possibility arrived 2 years later. Claire was pregnant. They were terrified and overjoyed in equal measure. Neither had good models for parenting. Both carried trauma from their childhoods. But they were determined to break cycles, to create something different. David Garrett Morrison Rodriguez arrived on a snowy December morning. 7 pounds 9 ounces. Perfect. Holding his son for the first time, Emmett cried. This tiny human, this future, this chance to give a child everything he'd lacked. Hawk visited at the hospital, held his grandson with tears streaming down his face. He has your eyes, David's eyes. I hope I can be half the father you were to me. You'll be amazing. You already know what kids need. You've built your whole life around providing it. David grew up surrounded by love, not just from Emmett and Claire, but from extended family. The Angels, who became uncles. Delilah, who was Aunt Delilah. The Second Chances community, who watched him toddle through the center, accepting him as one of their own. Emmett was a hands-on father, changed diapers, got up for nighttime feedings, read bedtime stories, taught David to ride a bike, later a motorcycle. But he also taught deeper lessons about seeing people who were invisible, about using privilege to lift others, about the responsibility that came with having security most people lacked. When David was 5, Emmett took him to the memorial at Franklin Middle School, showed him the plaque. What did you do, Daddy? David asked. I helped someone who needed it, and it changed my life. Can I help people too? You already do, buddy. Every time you're kind, every time you notice someone who's sad and ask if they're okay, every time you share with someone who has less, that's helping. David took those lessons to heart, grew into a compassionate kid, the kind who befriended new students, who stood up to bullies, who understood that kindness mattered. Second Chances continued expanding. By the time David was 10, the organization operated in 30 cities. Thousands of kids served, hundreds of success stories. But Emmett never lost sight of the individual. Every kid who walked through the doors got his attention, his care, his belief that they could overcome whatever they'd survived. At 40, Emmett stepped back from day-to-day operations, hired a brilliant executive director, someone with vision and management skills, someone who could scale the organization while maintaining its heart. Emmett became board chair, still involved, still present, but with more space for other things, for family, for life beyond the work. He started teaching at Riverside Community College, social work course, using his experience to train the next generation. Students loved his classes, his refusal to sugarcoat the difficulty of the work, his insistence that caring for yourself was as important as caring for others. Claire opened her own practice, family medicine with a focus on underserved populations. She worked 3 days a week at her practice, 2 days volunteering at Second Chances. Found balance that had always eluded her. They built a life, messy and beautiful, hard and rewarding, exactly what they'd both needed. On their 10th wedding anniversary, they renewed their vows, this time at home. Just them and David and Hawk and Delilah. Small, intimate, perfect. 10 years ago, I promised to choose you every day, Emmett said. I've kept that promise. I'll keep it for the rest of my life. You're my partner, my equal, my home. Claire smiled. And you're mine. Thank you for showing me what love looks like when it's healthy, when it's partnership, when it's real. They kissed while David made gagging sounds and everyone laughed. This was family. Chosen, fought for, built one day at a time. This was home. Second chances continued growing. By Emmett's 40th birthday, it operated in 20 cities nationwide. Thousands of kids served, legislative changes enacted. Emmett stepped back from day-to-day operations, hired an executive director, became board chair, wanted more time with family, with David, with Hawk now 75 and slowing down. They had good years, quiet years. Hawk taught David to ride a bicycle, then later a motorcycle. On the 20th anniversary of the fire, they gathered at the school memorial. 3 generations, Hawk, Emmett, Claire, David, Delilah and her family, all connected by that single moment when a terrified boy decided someone else's life mattered more than his fear. Emmett looked at his family, his life's work, the legacy spreading beyond anything he'd imagined, and felt profound gratitude. For the fire that brought him here, for Delilah's trust, for Hawk's love, for the angel's protection, for Claire's partnership, for David's joy, for every choice that led to this moment. This was home, not a place, not a building. The people who saw him when he was invisible, who chose him when he had nothing, who loved him through everything. This was family. And family, Emmett had learned, was everything. He pulled out his journal that night, the leather worn from years of use, and wrote one final entry. Mom, 20 years ago I was sleeping behind a dumpster wondering if I'd survive the winter. Today I'm surrounded by family leading an organization that's changed thousands of lives, watching my son grow up with the security I never had. You told me I'd be okay. You were right. Not because everything was easy, not because the pain disappeared, but because I found people who chose to see me, who stood beside me, who proved that family isn't about blood or perfection. It's about showing up, about staying, about loving someone enough to let them become who they were meant to be. I've spent my life trying to pay forward what Hawk and the Angels gave me, what you gave me before you left. The gift of being seen. I hope wherever you are, you're proud. I hope you know your son is more than okay. He's home. Emmett closed the journal, put it on the shelf next to 20 others, a chronicle of 20 years. From invisible to valued, from alone to surrounded, from broken to whole. Tomorrow he'd wake up and do the work, help more kids, build more programs, expand the vision. But tonight he simply sat on his porch watching the stars, David's ring on his finger, Claire beside him, and felt the profound peace of knowing exactly where he belonged. The frost that October morning 20 years ago had seemed like an ending, the final cold before giving up. Instead, it had been a beginning, the beginning of everything that mattered. And Emmett Webb Morrison, once homeless and forgotten, now father and mentor and bridge builder, understood the truth his mother had known all along. One act of courage, one moment of choosing to see another human being could change everything. For the person being seen, and for the person choosing to look. That was the lesson, the gift, the legacy. And it was enough.